Yo, guys, what up? It's your boy back in here again after that lovely debate that I did with your boy Hazem, man. So this I think is going to be a real good one, and you know what? This was actually much easier than actually other top 10 lists that we've actually done. Because when I said, well, I was like, basically, I was like, boom, 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 boom. What was hard about this were the ones I had to sort of, actually, no, out of all the top 10 lists we've done, this has been the easiest, I think. Like, I've not really had to decipher too much because looking at my list now, I think I'm good. So how is it coming up with the list then?
The order I'm still not sure about, but it was funny because I did a little bit of research just to think up of when I was racking my brain about which films to list. I would Google top sequels and see all these different websites as entries, and there were super shockingly a lot of them were similar to mine. So I think it's fairly this list that I'm going to provide is fairly uncontroversial. But I did, I wasn't sure about putting certain ones in that I thought were could be construed as remakes or reboots. You know what I mean? But I put them in anyway. There's one glaring specific case that I think you may be. You may know what I'm talking about, but
no. It's easy for me because again, like when I think sequel, because basically, again, that's why there may be a film in here that you may say, why didn't you put that film in there? So when I think sequel, I don't think a part 2 where you already knew what the part 2 was. So okay, I'll break the dock right now. So don't tell me whether this film is on your list or not. Two Towers isn't on my list.
Mine either, because I perceive both Star Wars, the original trilogy, as sort of a whole, actually, and the Lord of the Rings as well. I don't know why, but it just didn't feel right placing those movies sequels.
No. I mean, no, because you see, for me, because I didn't put Two Towers because those 3 books were already written. So, because see, my main thing for a sequel is a great sequel is a really successful first film. You now have to match up what you did in that first film. So you don't even know what is happening in that second film. But right now, you didn't think about what will happen in that second film. You've been an amazing first film supremely. And now you now have to say, all right, how can I stack up against what was an amazing first film? So that was some of the psychology that I came with it. And I don't want to give this film away, but there is one film that I'm not sure about, whether it counts as a sequel. So when we get there.
Yeah, I think that's the one we're thinking of. It's the same one. Does it start with an M?
I mean, we'll see, but yeah, for me, I think it's okay. Also, as well, there is one pretty big one. There's one pretty big one that people will be like, "How did you leave that off?" And bro, I am happy that I left it off because this thing did not deserve to be. Oh, nah, because there was another one, but it doesn't count. But I mean, basically, we'll get them. So,
can I just say something that I found curious? Was that I found myself putting more 3s than 2s in this list, meaning the third entries in the series. I felt were stronger than the middle portions, at least from the list of sequels I put in.
Okay, no, because I'm just trying to think of the number 3s. I can only think of one, but okay. I'm mainly stuck with 2s because for me, most of the 3s aren't very good. Most of the time, the 2 is really good and the 3 just falters because the 3 doesn't stack up with how good the number 2 was. But look, man, let's get down to it, man. I think
can I just give you a small list before we get to the real
of films that didn't make your top 10?
Well, they didn't make my top 10. I was torn between actually Lethal Weapon 3 and 4. I don't think Lethal Weapon 2 is that good. And people that list it as I think it's like it's not bad either, but it's not as good as 3 and 4. 3 for me, the Lethal Weapon movies, I feel like they keep getting better as they go because you become more familiarized with the characters, and it's like by the time you get to the fourth, it's a family that you're familiar.
Yeah, and also I don't know how good Lethal Weapon 2 was, because I don't think Lethal Weapon 2 was better than Lethal Weapon 1, really. It was good.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, that's the exception. So Lethal Weapon was very good. Lethal Weapon 2 was okay, all right. But then Lethal Weapon 3 is really good, I felt. It's got a lot of Joe Pesci doing his shtick, that very humorous
Isn't where he says like, "Free South Africa, you dumb son of a."
But I like that. The best thing about Lethal Weapon 2 is that it introduced Joe Pesci, the character, and he tagged along for the rest of the franchise.
And remember, it was interesting because people knew Joe Pesci as that dude from Goodfellas, so he was not going back to his My Cousin Vinny, Joe Pesci, and everything. So it just shows like his versatility. Machine, I think you can kick us off with your number 10, bro.
My number 10. All right. This is listen. This is no particular order, actually, but I had to put this in because people who saw our prior segments may be aware of this, but this is my favorite of the Batman movies, and it's a sequel. And HH is going to frown at this, but I had to do it. Batman Forever at number 10. For the reason I could go at length. I could go on at length now as to why I rate Batman Forever as the best of the Batman movies, but I think I did it. We already discussed this, right? Quite in depth, and I don't want to bog this video down with rehashing what I already established.
No. Rehash so I can call you crazy. Rehash.
I'll rehash it. It's got the best score out of all of them by far. No, not by far. It's close. Actually, Denny Elfman did a fantastic job with the first entry. But I do feel that the score in Batman Forever is even better. And then you have a pretty decent Robin, as good as a Robin is ever going to get when you think about how ridiculous that character is and how unique to the comic book universe a character like that is. That's as good as a Robin is ever going to get, I feel. You can find the actor, I forget what his name is now, but you can find the actor annoying, but he's actually a good casting for that role. What else? It's the most faithful to the comics. It embraces a lot of different elements from the Batman character, which is an ever-evolving character and has had different iterations throughout the decades. We all know that the Batman of the 60s, the camp Batman, as played by Adam West, that was actually a reflection of the comics. The comics were extremely campy. So the TV show was actually faithful to the comics.
Were the comics really as campy as
initially
zooming in on nipples on the ass?
So here it is. So in the 40s they were very dark, 50s as well, right? And then in the 60s they got campy. Now, if you want me to tell you whether it was the TV show influencing the comic book or the other way around, I don't know the exact chronology of that. But I do know that the comics were extremely campy. And then in the 70s, they got a little bit more serious with Neil Adams and these guys getting in on the action. And in the 80s, totally dark again. Frank Miller put his stamp on Batman, and he became the grim, dark Batman that sort of followed us all the way to the zeros and tens and 20s now. But what Batman Forever did is it united all these different elements of Batman, which in a sense it makes for a more faithful interpretation of the character than any of the previous ones. Certainly more than Tim Burton's interpretation of Batman, which, as you yourself have admitted to, you realized recently that you're more of a Tim Burton Batman fan than an actual Batman fan, and that does make sense. In that within that framework, that makes sense that you would be such a huge fan of the films and the interpretation of the character, because that's the character but it's not necessarily the character of Batman. And what else is good about that movie? It's just super heroic, man. It embraced super heroics, and as a kid watching it in theaters, I thought, man, this is the greatest. Finally, they got superheroes right. They
Oh no, okay, but do you feel that it's greatly improved upon the 1989 Batman?
the 1989. It's just the 1989 Batman was too moody, too. It certainly isn't bad. It's like it's a very solid film. And I was just watching it recently on 4K, and it's got this completely different. They gave it a completely different color gradation. That's gives it more of a cold, like a blue look, and it made the movie more interesting to me for some reason. But yeah, so I found myself really enjoying the film. But with Batman Forever, I think it's a superior film. Honestly, you're more engaged throughout the running length. It's always the action set pieces are better. Jim Carrey is extremely entertaining. Even Tommy Lee Jones, who hated being in the film and was hamming it up.
Look, those guys were just wild, man. Those guys were.
Yeah, but it's a wild little dynamic it's just fun to watch. It's like, it's not high art or anything, but they do embrace some of the darker elements of Batman as well. And we were speaking about the deleted scene, which is one of the great crimes against humanity, I feel.
But it wasn't in it.
Yeah, the fact that they deleted that scene, which is one of the strongest. If they had kept it in, it would have been like, so good, man. Because I think it would have improved the movie, which I already rate considerably high, immensely.
Okay, so that is Machines number 10. So let me hit you with my number 10. It's similar. It's along the same road. It's maybe even in the same family. But my film, I feel, is vastly superior to yours. My number 10 is Batman Returns. Now, initially, initially, I wasn't a fan of Batman Returns because when I watched that as a kid, I was like, this is creepy. The Penguin scares me. Catwoman was still super sexy. Even as a child, he was still super sexy. But Batman was hardly in it. So I was like, wait, no. This is more of like a Penguin Catwoman film. But watching it in my adulthood right now, I'm like, oh, this is what it's about. This is what makes it amazing. If you look at my Twitter homepage header, it's the image of Batman and Batman Returns. For me, I think what Tim Burton was able to do, because the reason why you have to put this as a top sequel is Batman 89 is one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. And we're going to do a comic book movie top 10 list. And I just think that what he did was he maintained the aesthetic of the world, but he made it darker. He made it moodier. And I think that he enhanced the artistic visuals of what you saw in the film. I thought the best Batman costume is Batman Returns costume. He completely redefined how you viewed the Penguin, who I thought as a
Isn't it the same one? It's the same one.
What do you mean?
Isn't the Batman Returns costume the same one as the previous one?
It's the cowl is thicker, and they've defined the nose more. So basically, it's more bulky and it's more well defined. In Batman 89, it's very simple, but you could just say that they've gone into a lot more detail into accentuating the lines here and also the cowl and so forth. So there was a big noticeable difference. And for me, I just like the way he represented Catwoman, Penguin, and Batman, and just how he was able to tell that kind of very creepy, dark story. Throughout the years, I've appreciated it a lot more. And I think that is the great testament of a sequel, which is what you will see in my list, is that rather than copying what you did in the first thing, is taking a risk and going in a rapidly different direction, but without betraying the very essentials and the fundamentals that's made the first film so good. I think that's what Batman Returns did. It didn't try to go through the same ABC storyline and aesthetic of Batman. It was still dark. Batman was
Let me ask you.
still darker.
So, but why is a movie like Batman Forever lambasted for being cheesy in certain portions and being just cheesy, and then a movie like Batman Returns is so fantastic, and the ending sequence is a bunch of penguins like walking around with missiles on their strapped to their backs
because it artistically, visually, aesthetically, it was much more edgy and it felt much more serious. Do you know what the issue was?
It's still penguins with missiles, bro.
But even if it's penguin with missiles, it still walked in what was the absurdity of the world that he created, which was still dark. So even if those were penguins, it still felt dark. I think Batman Forever just was too much of a departure of what Tim Burton had laid down in parts 1 and part 2. I still think
it was a strong departure. You're right, but it was a totally different director, totally different actor. I wish Michael Keaton would have stuck around.
Oh no!
To reprise his role.
He read the script for Batman Forever and he said, "I'm off."
Why? I don't get it.
No, because Machine, you're insane to say Batman Forever is anywhere as good as Batman Returns, man. So,
okay. Listen, I haven't watched Batman Returns in a long time. I have watched 89 recently. It went up slightly in my estimation. Sometimes these things ebb and flow, but yeah, I enjoyed myself watching 89. Batman Returns. I have a friend of mine whose opinions on film I respect. He really has a bone to, like an axe to grind against Batman Returns. He says it's like one of the worst sequels of all time. Wow. And he has a particular bone to pick with the Max Schreck character. I don't remember exactly what he told me about it, but at the time it made sense to me. He said, like, this is one of the most ridiculous characters of all time. The one played by what's his name?
Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken, yes.
I
don't know why. Maybe you can elucidate me.
No. I think I think the Max. I think look, it's basically it was Batman Returns was more of a Tim Burton movie than Batman 89 was more of a I'm a Batman movie, because I think Batman Returns was this kid from Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Beverly Hills just made us crazy money. So like, look, free reign. But obviously, if the free reign meant penguins scared the living daylights out of kids, and they're like, okay, Tim, thank you, but no thanks. We now need to bring in Joel Schumacher to really remind guys that Batman is actually still friendly, not this freakish dude where you see black blood coming out of penguin and so forth. But still, he took risks.
No, for sure, yeah. But by the way, who got that's crazy that they got Tim. What was the rationale behind getting Burton? Because he's not. Is it because he's just has a visual sort of?
No. Because basically, I think because he used to work at Disney.
No.
Yeah, so basically, like, he was like an artist at Disney. And I think people knew of him that this was like a kind of like a very strong young visual director. And I think when you look at Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and I remember Beetlejuice was really successful. So I think that their thinking was, we need someone that we can control.
And a great movie, and I love Beetlejuice as well.
Yeah. So basically, we need someone because they say we need somebody who is talented, but we can control. Because if, let's say, they got like a Brian De Palma, bro, I did Scarface and The Untouchables. You can't control me. Like, I've already made my name, but Tim Burton wasn't as big a name as a De Palma or a Scorsese or a Spielberg. Those guys who could have got in 1989, who were already huge in the 80s. So I think it was Tim Burton was, we can control him. He's a visualist, and he maybe has an inkling in understanding the comic book world. Because like, this is a comic book, we need somebody who really is close to the comic book world.
That's where they were wrong.
An artist.
That's where they were wrong, because not only did he know nothing about comic books, he actually has sort of like a just above the surface disdain for comic books, and that expresses itself in his casting choices. He tried to like really go against the grain with Michael, what's his face,
Keaton,
Michael Keaton,
whose
but he ended up shooting
whose
himself.
real name is actually Michael
He's
Douglas, actually.
No, he's actually a good choice for Batman. He ended up being a pretty good choice for Batman. I think he did a good job.
Wait, but see, this is quote. This is a quote from Michael Keaton, apparently. I was waiting in line for another movie and just kind of poked my head in, watched about 10 minutes, and I saw enough to know that I made the right decision. So it's also Keaton about Batman Forever, why he didn't do Batman Forever.
Well, he's whatever, man. I don't give a shit.
All right, let's move on, man.
So he poked his head in for 10 minutes, and that's his. Okay, all right.
Machine, there is no way in hell. See, no, I already said Batman Forever is my number one guilty pleasure.
Sorry.
It's a great film. It's my number one guilty pleasure film. Okay, I know this film is stupid.
Listen, there's no such thing. You got to come to the realization there's no such things as guilty pleasures.
No,
pleasures or not.
Because I know the film isn't good, but I just enjoy watching the film. So every time the film was on TV, I said, look, let me just enjoy this thing. It is what it is and everything. It's campy, it's whatever. Let me just watch it. Number 9, Nuevo.
Mine. Okay. I said this is way too low in the list, man. This is way too low in the list.
Didn't you order this stuff up?
Yeah, it's the order is like I told people the order is like all out of whack. I'm sorry about that. But Toy Story 3 is what I have, and Toy Story 3. I was looking at the lists I mentioned for research for this, and there's people that actually put Toy Story 2. Toy Story 2 is the ugly duckling in the original trilogy by far, man. It's like unimaginative, by the numbers sequel that has nothing memorable about it. Toy Story 3 is a masterpiece and probably just about trumps the original Toy Story, which I thought was fantastic to begin with. But this one has a lot more heart and just punctuates, just puts an end to, draws the series to a close in such a poignant and beautiful way that 4 really was never going to be needed, and it's actually a bit of a travesty that they went on and produced it. And not only that, it was incredibly subpar in my estimation, Toy Story 4. But I know that you never watched this movie, and that's
okay. Let me tell you my story about Toy Story is similar to Pixar. I remember watching Toy Story and so forth. And I was like, no. Cool. Decent. Isn't as good as Basil the Grey Master Detective. Isn't as good as the old Disney film, but it's a decent.
What do you mean cool, decent? It's fantastic, man.
No, I'm not.
Just the premise itself, like of toys coming alive.
No. It is a superb premise. I have an issue with Pixar. I don't like their films. I don't like their comedy. I hate their content. Great animation. I just hate how they make films. So for me, I was like, so I haven't seen Toy Story 2. I haven't seen Toy Story 3. But let me tell you this, Machine. I hate what I called EM. What is EM? Emotional manipulation. I don't like being taken into a film where we are going to make you cry. Whether you like it or not, you will cry. I'm like, no. You've got to end that right to try and make me cry.
Okay, but you rate 12 Years a Slave highly, and that's the ultimate in emotional manipulation. Not even, it's just a manipulation of the audience. Like,
no. You know why it's not on the same level? 12 Years a Slave this is real. This happened.
Yeah,
and also the way that Steve McQueen makes films, he makes films in a very cold, matter-of-fact manner. Pixar are the masters of emotional manipulation. We are doing this in a cheap way to try and make you cry. Oh, oh.
But but listen, I only consider it cheap if it's just if it's sort of gratuitous.
Look,
If it's
salute, cheers.
gratuitous. But if you build up a character, and if you build up the circumstances of the character, and whatever happens at a certain point that's dramatic, to like brings out your makes you well up or whatever. If you did it properly, then that I don't consider that exploitative. I don't consider that manipulative. But for instance, I don't want to go back to 12 Years a Slave, but with 12 Years a Slave, you get introduced to the main character. I haven't watched it in a while, since the first time I watched it when it first released. But you get introduced to the character in the beginning, correct? And then his family for 2 seconds, and then all of a sudden he's taken away from his family, and then you cut to the end portion, and he's reunited with his family, and it's supposed to be this really dramatic moment. And I'm like, I never even met these guys, man. Why am I supposed to like feel horrible? You know what I mean, man? That's exploitative, because that's expecting the audience to create a bond with characters that haven't been fleshed out enough for you to do so. You know what I mean? And then there's the other issue with the Brad Pitt character, which is the most ridiculous character I've ever seen in a movie.
Oh, he's in Toy Story?
No. In 12 Years a Slave, like Ex Machina, where he shows up, he's like, I ain't like those other white fellas. I hail from Canada, and I'm here to save. All of a sudden, I'm here to save the conflict of the movie. There's the writer wrote himself into a hole. Oh, let me get an Ex Machina. What if like we introduced this character? It's like a good white guy, but like a good white guy.
No, but
why is he good?
Remember though,
Canada.
Brad Pitt's Plan B company produced the film.
Yeah.
So Brad Pitt was like, wait a minute. You think me, a white dude who has black kids who he's orphaned, I'm going to produce a slave film and I'm not going to be the white hero? What?
But that's the most. But that's the cheapest. You talk about like the white hero and that kind of trope. That's the cheapest example that I can think of. Is that character, man? It's cheap in every sense. It's an ex machina, and then it represents a trope that's sort of offensive, really. But yeah, I have all sorts of problems with that film. I'm just surprised you consider Pixar emotionally manipulative, and then you rate that particular.
No, but see, just look. I will get around. I know guys are getting at me on the live chat right now saying that I'm a brick based on my logic for not watching these films. I will get to Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3. It's just that I don't like films that are overtly emotional and stuff. But I admit that Toy Story, see, it was a quality film, and I mean, no, that was a quality film. And I've heard great things about Toy Story 3. It's just that I just don't enjoy Pixar films. I just don't. But look, man, I will take your word for it that Toy Story 3 is that dude. And yeah, I think people have said like, I think Part 4 was just like a money grab.
So it was totally a money grab. I'll send you a pirated version of Toy Story 3 so you can watch it.
Machine, you know that the Chinese and North Koreans are watching these.
I'm sorry. No.
So come on, man. Huh? Yeah. Let's just bro, you can't trust these dudes, man. So my number 9 is let's take things in a comedic route. Let's go comedic. The original to this film was revolutionary based on what it did for this superstar, because the original of this film pretty much made this guy a movie star, and this guy was arguably the biggest movie star in the 80s. So to follow this up with a film of this level, with a first film that was such a hit, proves why it has to be on this list. Bum 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 bro, Beverly Hills Cop 2.
I love it.
You see, Beverly Hills Cop, you have to understand what Beverly Hills Cop is. You have to remember, okay, first of all, Beverly Hills Cop was originally written for Stallone. And the script of Beverly Hills Cop was a serious cop movie that they wanted Sly Stallone to star in. But whoever thought about this, which was a stroke of genius, because the story itself is pretty, it's not the most inventive or interesting story. But what is the magic of the film is Eddie Murphy and how Eddie Murphy, the incredible comedian, reacts to the regular kind of, we've seen this a million times, paints by the numbers cop storyline in this film. So this Beverly Hills Cop, obviously I know about Trading Places Coming to America. Beverly Hills Cop was what made him a movie star, and this is still arguably his biggest film. So maybe if other films made more, this was, I think, Eddie Murphy's most important film, because and this is the film that I think people know him for.
That series for sure, yeah.
For sure, the series. Beverly Hills Cop 2 is better than Beverly Hills Cop 1 because it's a better story. See, Beverly Hills Cop 1, put it this way, the comedy is still pretty much the same, although Eddie Murphy has some extremely funny scenes in Part 2. But what makes Part 2 better than Part 1 is Part 2 has a better story. And you know what's funny? So Stallone was supposed to star in Beverly Hills Cop, but went to Eddie Murphy. But Stallone's wife, Bridget Nielsen, was the main villain in Part 2. So there's a crazy kind of connection there. So Part 2 was like just as funny, just as hilarious. The chemistry between him and the other two white cops is still there. And the story, I just thought that was more enhanced and more dynamic and much more interesting, So
do you think that because the first Beverly Hills Cop was sort of written for no one in particular, and Stallone was attached at a certain point? Do you think that the second one, because it became an Eddie Murphy flick, basically, that the character, that they nailed the character better, that it was more in line with the Eddie Murphy persona? Or because I haven't watched any of these films in years and years, but they used to be my favorite films. Some of my favorites up there. I have to rewatch them, man. And I remember actually distinctly that I actually enjoyed 3 as well.
I didn't like 3.
You didn't like 3?
3. Oh, do you know George Lucas makes a cameo in Part 3?
Really?
Like, remember at the playground, like the outside the kind of like fair, he makes an appearance there.
Okay.
Yeah, Part 3 was, you see, that just shows you where the amount of films where the sequel isn't as good as the first. See, the third is what I thought Part 2 was, what many people thought the Part 2 would be like. We're like, it's there, but it just don't really hit the magic, and the story just isn't interesting. Part 2 was like, oh wow, much better story, much more interesting story, and you're keeping the same comedy aesthetic and chemistry of the first film, but the gags are much more interesting because the story is much more expansive, and I don't think he really had that in the Part 3 just didn't work for me. You know what I think? I think they maybe waited too long, because I think Part 3 was in the 90s, and I think there was a much longer period between 2 and 3 than there was between 1 and 2. So Part 3 didn't do it for me, but Part 2.
And it featured, I forgot this, it featured Judge Reinhold, Beverly Hills Cop, who was in everything in the 80s. Remember him, man?
Remember Vice Versa?
Huh?
Vice Versa?
That was a movie?
Where he sort of swaps places with this kid, I think. So he becomes young, but he's still old. Basically, he was like an 80s stalwart,
Yeah, for sure. He was in everything. He was like the Steve Guttenberg of... it was him and Steve Guttenberg,
Oh, man. Steve Guttenberg. and what's his face? Corey Feldman.
Corey Feldman.
Corey Feldman, yeah. All right, man. So, what is your number 9? Oh, sorry, your
I've not aged very well, man. It's too bad.
Your number 8.
Okay. Die Hard 3.
Okay.
It could be higher up, but I think it's a fantastic sequel. I think once again it's a case of the number 3 being way better than number 2 in my estimation. Number two,
A very rare case. A very rare case.
I don't think it's that rare, man. I'll give you Return of the Jedi as well. Toy Story 3, which I just mentioned. I wouldn't say Return of the Jedi is way better than Empire Strikes Back, but I do like it more if when all is said and done. But with this Die Hard 3, it was, well, they got McTiernan back, right? And McTiernan, who's one of the very up there with the GOAT directors in my estimation. Certainly the best action director we've ever seen. Put a movie together that's every bit is not as good, probably not as good as Die Hard 1, but certainly worthy of mention in the same breath as Die Hard 1, which is a high, a tall feat. And why is it worthy of mention? Because the action set pieces are fantastic. The character dynamic that he creates between John McClane and Sam Jackson is hilarious and very compelling. The way that he fleshes out the John McClane character, where you realize that he's really like he's even more problematic than we got to see in the first film. He's like a full-blown alcoholic. And that's totally crazy, man. He's got sort of a death wish, really. But that's why that's what makes him so dangerous. And then the Jeremy Irons character, who's not quite at the Alan Rickman level, but he's Jeremy Irons, so he does a fantastic job. And yeah, it's great to see.
Bruce one of the best opening 20 minutes in any film.
Sorry?
One of the two things. One of the best opening 20 minutes to any film.
Mm-hmm.
And I always used to get pissed off because I couldn't do the water bottle challenge as quickly as they did during the film. I was like,
that's right. Yeah. That's a great scene, huh?
So Pepsi.
And just the idea of them tooling around New York and doing these different tasks, and it's like
wait. Did you ever play the game on PlayStation?
Die Hard with a Vengeance? No.
There was a game on PlayStation, and I remember the level where you have to get the taxi from one area of New York to the other area of New York, and basically weave through traffic, go through Central Park, all that kind of stuff.
I remember. I'll always remember who the 31st president or whatever it was of the United States is. Chester A. Arthur. I remember that name because of that movie.
And remember because remember they did 2 endings. There's like another ending which they did, which is actually pretty good. Just I forgot, but there was an alternative ending that they did, which is actually pretty good.
21st president of the United States, Chester A. Arthur. But so they did 2 different endings?
Yeah.
Wow.
I can't remember what happened in the alternative ending, but yeah, they
I would say that the third act is the weakest spot of the film. The very end. Because it's just it doesn't fall apart, but it's a little bit anticlimactic, There's a scene with a helicopter and McClane shoots it, and the helicopter gets, the thing gets caught up in the phone lines and blows up. It just feels a little, they could have done a bit better, I feel.
This is interesting. Now, because this is an interesting point that Daniel makes, which is they flipped a Simon Says idea into a Die Hard movie, and halfway through, it's back to a Die Hard film. The reason why I think Omoyo Cole is on something interesting is because like Omoyo Cole is going to the point of where I think it should have been that you can make that Simon Says idea an entire film. But I think that it could have been a thing where you could stretch that idea for like 2/3 of the film, and the last third is a face-off trying to find Jeremy Irons, because it did feel like if these 20 minutes are bloody amazing, and then if
Not even.
similar to like Seven.
I
For
would say
Seven, they constantly change. Easy, but see, for like Seven, for most of the movie, they're just chasing this dude who is leaving out all of these crazy clues based on the seven deadly sins. So the Simon Says idea could have been something elongated through most of the film, and for the last third is where they now try and basically face him and trying to take him down. But it's completely changed into just another Die Hard film, and the kind of urgency that he had with that idea for the first 20 minutes was sort of lost.
No, but I would say, but you're being unfair when you say just the first 20 minutes. I would say the breakoff, the transitional point where it goes downhill, is when they find this freighter, right? Where they have this liquid that that creates the bombs. You remember that?
Yeah.
It's blue and red liquid. If you join it together, it like creates this megaton bomb. And once they go into that ship and they get captured, that's when the movie falls apart for me. But everything up to then, from the tunnel scene to the scene with them trying to get the kids out of the school, to the scene where, dude, there's so many great scenes in that movie, man. Oh, one of the great scenes is the elevator scene in the Federal Reserve.
Oh yeah.
Like where McClane, which Captain America, with the second movie of Captain America, ripped off, where Captain America 4 or 5 dudes. McClane does that in much more gruesome fashion in Die Hard 3.
No. Wait, is that where he says where he asks one of the dudes do you know what the score was like in this a baseball game?
He says some joke that gets everybody laughing,
and then he then grabs the dude's gun and stuff.
Yeah, which goes back to the very end of Die Hard as well. It's a very John McClane thing to do. Hey, you fellas, say something like with levity, and then everybody gets disarmed, and then he shoots them in the face, which is what happened.
No. Look, McTiernan had some moves, man. He had some moves. Okay, you've mentioned something which is linked into my number 8, and my number 8 is very much linked into your number 8. Bow, 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 bow. Captain America, the Winter Soldier. For me, this is a superb sequel. And I think people don't give this sequel enough credit. First of all, I think the first film is an amazing film. And people underrate how good that first Avenger thing is. For me, Winter Soldier was the first truly grown-up MCU film. Like all the other MCU films were just films, but Winter Soldier was like, oh no, we're now going to take all the President's Men, hence why they cast Robert Redford in there, and give a political all the President's Men kind of undertone to this and make this a bit more edgy and a bit more of a serious thing. The fights choreography in this is outstanding. Absolutely flipping outstanding. I just wished Chris Nolan had actually paid attention to the fight scenes in this and implemented them in his Batman films, which have brick fight scenes. And what I like about this sequel and what every great sequel does is that it's how it raises the stakes and the position it leaves in, and how it turns everything on its head from what you saw in the first film. First film was Captain America. He's very earnest, good-natured, and so forth. He views the world black and white. But at the end of Winter Soldier, he views that not the world isn't black and white. The world is very, very gray, and the character himself grows up and really advances by the end of Winter Soldier, to where he now has to make a very, very bold choice with regards to his friends, who his friends are and who his enemies are. So yeah, I just thought that Winter Soldier was just a very, very well made film, and it was so good that the Russos pretty much spearheaded the Avengers films and so forth, because people decided, no, this is now exactly the aesthetic that we want to gain a level of respectability for the MCU films moving forward.
I don't know about aesthetic because all the MCU films seem very generic when it comes to aesthetic. And
Apart from Russo's films, I mean, I agree with you, but 90% of them are.
yo, I
No,
think
no. It's like CC for me. Look. I think MCU is overrated. Hence why most MCU films are garbage. But I think the ones that the Russos did, apart from Infinity War, which is trash, sort of stand out from the rest of the other ones. And I think Captain America: Winter Soldier is definitely one of those that were no. This is a cut above and a level above the rest of the pack.
well, listen. For me, I thought that Captain America, the original Captain America, was already really, really solid, and the first act of that movie is probably the greatest MCU first act that we've seen. Probably the greatest origin story out of all of them, I would argue.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, easily.
And if only they'd kept that energy right to the very end, and had not pussied out with the climax, which would have been so easy as well to keep. Which is, I'm talking about specifically when he's grabbing the plane, right?
Mm.
And he drives the plane down to the Arctic. And in a suicide move, apparently. The movie would have been so much more powerful if you ended it that way, with the death of Captain America, or the supposed death of Captain America, right? And then with the Avengers, you open that movie with finding Captain America on ice 50 years later, right? I can't quite rate that movie as highly as I probably should because of that glaring flaw. But it's I thought the first apart from that, I thought that the first Captain America entry was a solid entry. The second one was great as well. It got a little too pretentious with the political elements of it, but that's why Robert Redford is there to drop weird capitals like geographical facts.
Mm.
Which is what he seems to do with his career for the past 10 years, which is funny. He always drops weird cities and shit. You know where I learned that? I learned that in Bogota. You know where I first heard that? In Lima. And he does that. He does that in this movie. He does that in Spy Games. He does that in that Tom Cruise movie with Lions for Lambs. It's like he must have negotiated a contract where each and every single movie that he shows up,
like make it a.
He has to say 5 capitals of remote countries that nobody's ever heard of. I was rock climbing in Andorra. That's how I learned. Yeah, but whatever. Apart from that, I think it's a good movie, man. It's a very entertaining flick. It's probably one of the top MCU films for sure. And but that's not saying much. That's the thing. For me, the MCU films are always like a 7. A reliable 7. Sometimes they dip with your Thor 2s of the world and your
Ragnarok
3s. And other garbage, and Ant-Man, which was total garbage for me. And sometimes they go up a little bit with your Captain Americas and Winter Soldiers, but they only go up, but it's only a little bit. For me, they go up to like a 7.5, 7.8. They never make it to an 8, I've never seen an MCU film that's an 8, apart from maybe the original Iron Man.
I disagree, man. I did. For me, I think when I think Iron Man, you could argue is an 8. I would give an 8.5 to his Civil War. Probably a Winter Soldier, and that's about it. I think Civil War and Winter Soldier are better than that. I think they do more than an Iron Man.
But you agree with me that it's all generally it's all pretty humdrum, right?
Oh no, yeah. Like I don't rate the MCU that highly. It's
It's like
very
solid
same.
entertainment. But it's good, like, solid popcorn films most of the time. You go to watch them, you don't feel bad for having watched them. It's not like watching
Basically,
the
put it this
Star
way:
Wars prequels.
I would rather have MCU standard than the garbage of Man of Steel, Justice League, or Batman v Superman. Those pieces of crap films.
That's actually like an offense against everything that is good and right in this world.
Machine, easy way. Remember, I'm your guardian angel. Remember, nice things,
Nice things.
no negativity. Remember,
Okay.
let me let me say the negative things.
Thank you, man.
You you
Thank
you say the positive things. Okay,
you.
I'm here to protect you. I'm here to protect you.
Thank
Any
you, man.
negative things, let me do it. All
Thank
right. So um, where are we now, man? So
That's my it's my jam now.
yes, you're on number 7 now. Yeah.
All right. You ready for this?
Oh God.
Temple of Doom. Temple
You
of
go
Doom.
easy,
And
easy,
here's
easy.
an
Before you
example.
go.
Can I just tell you something? This is an example.
No, wait, no. Before you go, please, before you go. I have to say this. 100%. I wanted to put Temple of Doom on my list, but there simply wasn't any space. Let me say this right now. Forget what Spielberg has said about Temple of Doom. Forget what the media says. Kalima Shakti Day. Temple of Doom is a quality film, and it is a great sequel because Spielberg took risks. But because Spielberg is obsessed with being the nice guy, he actually crapped on his own film, which was a damn good film. Which for me, Temple of Doom made more of an impression on me
Did any of them?
than any other Indiana Jones films. So I just wanted to say that.
Same with me. It's exactly why I put it there. And it's funny because there's two entries on this list that, having done the research that we spoke of before in this video, in this stream, I was shocked to see them included. And one of them was Temple of Doom, because I always doubled and tripled down on Temple of Doom to much mockery from people, much like a Batman Forever. Like, I'm a big Batman Forever supporter. I did so with Temple of Doom and one other one that's included in this list that's often dismissed. And I was surprised to see these included in these lists. So, I always say, man, history puts things in their right place, which is why Messi will be outside everybody's top 10 in 30 years' time. But I digress. I'm sorry. Temple of Doom, fantastic.
Stay on track. Stay on track.
Probably my favorite Indiana Jones flick. It's a toss up between the first, The Last Crusade, and this one. I think that the third one is honestly the weakest of the weak link in the trilogy. Although it's not a bad movie, for me it's the weak link. Things to enjoy about this movie: the greatest set pieces of all. Harrison Ford at his absolute peak, right? He looked like the leading man, the leading man's leading man. That scene on the bridge, man, where he's like with the katana or whatever, he's about to.
Do you know I had since obviously because obviously I watched when I was in Nigeria and so forth, and I remember when the alligators ate them. I used to have nightmares of like, oh my god, what would it be like to be eaten by an alligator? So I just had this crazy nightmares of like, oh my god, like what would it actually be like? Like how would it feel? What would it be like? Because that just so shocked me when you just saw the alligators eat them.
Right. It's, in terms of mood, it's the darkest by far out of all of them. It's the reason why Spielberg said these comments is because he actually, because of this movie, the PG-13 rating was introduced. They hadn't done so prior to that. This was a kids' movie, right? Anybody could take their kids to the movie theater and see this guy like rip out the heart from some poor man's rib cage and then eat it. And like, oh, or I don't know if he eats it or not, but it's like beating in his hand. Pretty graphic stuff. And the ratings people went like, this isn't going to fly anymore. Already, Gremlins pushed it. In the 80s in general, like pushed it constantly. But the Temple of Doom was really the one that broke the camel's back, and they had to introduce a new rating. And that's why Spielberg, having felt some degree of guilt for that, decided to sort of disown the movie. But not really. I don't think he should at all. It's a fantastic movie.
Also, it's where he met his wife.
It's where he met Kate Bradshaw, right? Kate Bradshaw, yeah.
No, Capshaw, I think.
Capshaw. And there's that fantastic scene with them where they put their hands in a hole, and it's like these tarantulas and larvae and gnarliest creatures you can think of. All that stuff. As a kid, you're transfixed when you're seeing that. And then even that minecart scene, that set piece where they're in the minecarts and going through the tunnels and stuff, and that's fantastic. That's like fantastical.
Because it was.
It gets your mind. It gets your mind pumping, man. It's like
basically that's what makes it a great sequel, because it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think, is a masterpiece.
You know it's a prequel? Did you know it's a prequel?
Yeah, someone said that.
Yeah, it's a prequel. It takes place prior to. That's why, like, Indiana Jones is a bit of a prick in the movie. He's still he's transitioning into more mellowed out Jones that you see in.
Okay, so he's not a professor.
No, not yet.
Wow, you see, now I want to watch it again, just having that in mind now. But see, for me, that's why it's such a great sequel, because it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark masterpiece, tough.
Oh, somebody's mentioning it. Look, Horrid Films is mentioning it over there. Temple of Doom is technically a prequel.
Yeah,
it's not real. I mean, it's like it's a prequel, but it came out after The Last Crusade. That's why I included it.
Yes, no. But for me, I think that's why it's a great sequel, because it's like it went in a rapidly different direction from Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was different tonally, and just its approach, and even the story, even how it represents Indiana Jones, was so completely different. And I will always give you extra kudos if you're brave in going in a different direction for a sequel of a successful film. I will always give you extra kudos.
Same director, especially if it's the same director, right?
Yeah.
So that's, plenty of amazing set pieces. Even the scene with them eating monkey brains. You remember?
That was wild.
Real, man. That's a delicacy in China, man. We shouldn't speak about China because
Zip. All right. Okay. So it's my number 7 now. All right. Some people say this is low, but it is what it is, and I think you can't have a top 10 list without this. And I think we may have discussed this before, and I don't think me and you agree on this film's merit. Yeah, we don't. But let me just put it out there. Aliens. Now, be very clear here. There are 2 Aliens films. Now, I get your critique of Aliens, the original cut. Straight up action film, pretty much doesn't have the kind of sophisticated filmmaking quality that Ridley Scott brought for the first film. The director's cut is a different film. The director's cut of Aliens is a different film. The original cut of Aliens is an 80s action movie. The director's cut still has the action, but feels much more of a wholesome, complete film. And that director's cut for me is a fantastic film. And my thing is that this shows you why it's a great sequel. There's no point in doing what Ridley Scott did. Alien is perfect. You can't have a sequel of Alien. The whole point of Alien is that's it. You see a little bit of it and boom. We know nothing more. We know nothing because it's the mystery. You fill in all the blanks. It's supposed to just exist in and of itself. So really, technically, it's impossible to make a sequel. So what James Cameron did was the only logical thing you could do: change the genre. You have to just change the genre. So he was like, you know what? I'm just going to make this an action film. I'm going to keep the law, advance the story and everything. I'm going to make this an action film, and I'm going to expand. And you have to give kudos. Sigourney Weaver's only Oscar nomination, I believe, was for Aliens. You know, so she ended an Oscar nomination based for her performance in Aliens, and I just think that he embellished the character of Ripley really, really well, and I just think overall,
Action
and
hero. He became an action hero.
yeah, and an action hero, and also the the quality of the prosthetics. No, so the quality of the
Different. Sorry, to interrupt you, but like the first one, the Ripley of the first movie is the character who survived, right? The second one, the Ripley of the second movies is Schwarzenegger, female version,
Hmm.
the version of Schwarzenegger, basically. So
Oh,
like
no,
for a whole other dimension that didn't exist or wasn't even implied in the first one. It was just a matter of like the reason why she survived was a lot of luck and a little bit of grit, but it's certainly not her ability with a gun or anything.
hmm.
And then the second one, it seems to be more that.
No, for me, hence why I say it was you doing another survival film is redundant. So it's like this was the only way he could go. Hence why I have to just really give Cameron credit for saying, I'm going to make this survivor a powerful hero. And also, I am going to use that fear that she had, the horror she had in part one, as her strength in the sequel. So I think I like the way James Cameron said, I'm going to take everything that Ridley Scott, who he idolized in part one, and just ramp it up and just give it a different slant for what he did in Aliens. And for me, I just think, you have to give it credit because Alien is a classic. It's a horror classic. And how he was able, and look, Alien 3, Alien 4, Alien 5, all trash.
I don't think Alien 3 is trash at all, but I'll disagree with you there.
It's not trash, but it's nowhere near as good as Aliens. So yeah, man, you have to just give Aliens that dub, man. I mean, James Cameron really pulled through. James Cameron really pulled through.
Okay.
So this is now your number 6.
I think it's my number 6. Yeah, correct. And my choice is Naked Gun 33 and a third.
Oh, okay.
Which I think is the funniest Naked Gun movie. And I think all Naked Gun movies are hilarious.
So Naked Gun, is it Naked Gun 2 and 3/3?
I don't know like how they. Yeah, I think it's 2 and 3/3 and 33. Which is 3? 33 and a third is the third one.
Okay.
And I think it's the most hilarious out of all of them. Why? Because it's got this final set piece that's just fantastic. The whole movie is hilarious, but the final set piece in particular struck a chord with me. And there's something about the comedy of errors template when it's put into a theater context where something is going on in the theater that the audience is not aware of. The audience is misinterpreting everything that's going on, usually as real, like the actors aren't actors at all. There's like actual drama going on stage.
No. This is a perfect example of breaking the fourth wall.
Well, they break the fourth wall constantly, but it's the comedy of errors that I think is really hilarious towards the end. And it reminds me of another movie that's super underrated that probably most people aren't aware of, but stars great Gene Wilder, and it's called The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother. and it's got this end sequence in a theater that's one of the funniest things of all time, where there's like this code that they agree with each other, where it's like they have to give off like the like a parchment that's important. And the thing is like, why don't we all drink some very sexy wine? Oh man, just watch the thing; it's hilarious, man. Watch that scene. I'm gonna link it
Yeah, link it.
and the movie itself is hilarious. But anyway, I digress. I think this is Liam. What's his face? Can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
Is it Leslie Nielsen?
Leslie Nielsen. Why Liam? Leslie Nielsen at the peak of his powers, right? The funniest he's ever been. O.J. Simpson features heavily in it, which is it adds an extra sense of I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting to see him do his stuff. And yeah,
Wait. Have you seen Hot Shots Part II?
I have. So this is all like part of like an absurdist comedy style that I feel was pioneered. I feel, and everybody knows that was pioneered with Airplane, which I think is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think in that within that subgenre of comedy, my favorite movie, just below Airplane, is this one. There's other ones that you could put out there, namely Top Secret, if you haven't watched that, with Val Kilmer, one of Val Kilmer's first movies as a leading man. It's a fantastic movie, very, very funny. The one that you mentioned with Charlie
Sheen,
where he's doing the Rambo, a spoof of Rambo, basically. That's very funny as well. But then we haven't gotten a really funny one in a long time. It's been ever since the scary movies started coming out, and the Wayland brothers. They did a few that were pretty poor, and Boat Trip and stuff like this.
Yeah, like Meet the Spartans. Basically,
all that stuff is terrible. All that stuff is
do
garbage.
you know what it is? It's you have to be smart.
Yes.
This stuff, it's because it's not about gags, it's the quality of the script. Like Hot Shots Part II, Naked Gun, Airplane, and everything. The writing is of a very high level. But the problem that people have today is just get a famous comedian and just choose some cheap guys. And see, the comedian is now engineering the jokes instead of no, this has been written with the guy in the script.
Let him do something zany on stage. You know, a script is just a template, and then you just let the actors like improv, and we'll figure it out. It's not like that, man. You know, like to do absurdist comedy in the vein of Airplane and what have you. It's a very tough game, man. You need to get it absolutely right. It needs to be very well thought out. It seems off the cuff and everything, but it's anything but.
Okay, man. Look, man. That was a good entry because I didn't even think of that because that's again is my childhood. Naked Gun, man. So
Go watch clips of it. Go watch clips of it now, and I dare you not to laugh.
I will. But I can bet you. There was a really sexy lady in it, wasn't there?
Anna Nicole Smith.
Yeah, and she had like a mole.
Who married like this 90-year-old billionaire from Texas.
Look, man, that film was wild. Man.
Like, I'm just in love with it. I'm just in love with him. What can I say?
Okay, man. Okay, so
yeah.
My number 6, The Empire Strikes Back. Look, man, you have to put it in there. Now, let me tell you this. I prefer A New Hope. A New Hope is my favorite in the series.
Oh, okay.
But as far as the sequel goes, this is a great sequel, especially how it ends, what happens, how it raises the stakes, how it advances the story, the risk in which it takes the story, and where it takes the story and the reveals that happen. you simply have to give Empire Strikes Back kudos. And again, like, look, man, basically, it is so influential and so huge that so many trilogies after this went with the template of our second film has to be darker. Our second film has to be darker. And Lucas really began that trend of the second film in your trilogy being the dark film where things really take a turn for the worse. And yeah, man, like just the battle scenes on Hoth. See, Darth Vader wasn't really a great character in part one. This was where Darth Vader really came into his elements.
So either I didn't think so either.
The introduction of also Lando Calrissian as well. So it's advanced so many elements of A New Hope, because where A New Hope just felt very linear, very closed off. This just say, look, man, let's just really expand things and take things to the next level. And yeah, one of the greatest endings of all time.
I think a lot of people overrate this film because of how much impact it had in terms of the reveal, But for someone, I don't even remember the reveal being a thing for me. You know what I mean? Because it was always sort of like a knowledge that had been deeply ingrained in my mind. Prior to my knowing anything, I just knew that Darth Vader was.
In case no one has seen it.
Are you kidding me, man? Are you kidding me?
Bro, people here haven't seen The Matrix. So, look, I'm not putting it past anyone, So.
Right, that twist, right, was not a twist for me, or it didn't feel like, and it didn't feel impactful. That's the thing, because I didn't rate Darth Vader all that highly. I just thought he was like some bitch, in the first one, because he gets told to shut up by some low-level admiral, you and your sorceress ways, Vader, and then he does that whole thing with the force choke.
Yeah.
And then he does that, and then he gets told to, he gets ordered around by Grand Moff Tarkin, release him, Vader. And Vader's portrayed as sort of a kooky enforcer that the Emperor keeps around just to amuse him, like an enforcer, like a high-level gangster.
Yeah, like a thug bodyguard.
Go whack that guy, that's what Vader is. It's not really.
Okay. So, which is your two questions then? What do you think is the best film of the three? Which is your favorite of the three?
Okay, best film of the three is A New Hope, and my favorite of the three is A New Hope. But I will say this: out of the sequels, I prefer Jedi than Empire.
Think about Jedi. Let me talk about Jedi briefly, and then I'll give it to you. Is that again? I think Empire Strikes Back deserves a lot of the love, but I feel that people overlook how good Return of the Jedi is. I think Return of the Jedi, the way it ended the film was great. And also, Return of the Jedi has my favorite film in all three films, which is when Luke's final scene with Yoda. I think for me, that's just personally for me, that was just the most emotional and just the best scene that just impacted me the most out of all three films. And
also it's got fantastic set pieces like the speeders in the forest. That's fantastic. The way they shot that, it felt like I'd never seen anything like that. The scene with Jabba the Hutt is fantastic, where they rescue Han Solo and Tatooine, and then with the sand worms eating up Boba Fett and all that. There's all sorts of scenes, man. There's this one thing about Jedi that I don't like, which is the Ewoks. Ewoks get a little silly,
They don't bother me that much. Basically, they don't bother me as much as it does bother other people. So
no, it's not a deal breaker for me. It's not like Jar Jar Binks or not even Jar Jar Binks. Can I tell you something, man? Jar Jar Binks isn't
machine. Jar Jar Binks is bad.
But no, he's pretty bad. But C-3PO and R2-D2, that shtick gets old as well, man. Those are both super boring. Oh my! R2. It's super silly and
you know what it is?
It's a tired shtick.
C-3PO, maybe I love R2-D2. I love R2D2. Like for me, I can never get bored of. There's just something about R2D2 that no, I just love that dude. I
Yeah,
just
because
love R2D2.
I mean, it's funny that like people are speaking to the thing that's going, but yeah, there's always been my thing with Jar Jar, even though he's like a super ridiculous character. Um, so was that Star Wars was always had these characters. C-3PO is a terrible character. It's super annoying. Hate to tell you. But, what was I saying? Empire Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back is probably a more classically tighter film than Return of the Jedi, and it does
Mm.
have that reveal at the end, which Return of the Jedi can never quite compete with. Um, but the scenes in Return of the Jedi impacted me more, and I think are more memorable. That final showdown between Skywalker and Vader at the end, with the Emperor looming
Skywalker.
above them, and that's just very powerful stuff. I wish they wouldn't show. They hadn't shown Vader's face. I think that was the ultimate anticlimax. It's like some old dude, some generic looking old
Yeah,
white.
well, I think it was still needed though. I think that was still
It
a
humanized him. It humanized him. It's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
But I wish they would have made him look more badass. Basically, is what I'm saying. That's not how I expected James Earl Jones's voice to look like. That's not
You have a point there. You have a point there. Like the face didn't match the voice that would have been given for the two films.
at all. Yeah,
Okay. So 5.
my 5.
Yeah.
Okay, my 5 is Mission Impossible 3. And
Lovely voice.
thank you, man. And that's another. And you know what, man? This is another entry that people call me crazy for. Another one of those that I doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on, and people called me ridiculous for saying it. And then all of a sudden, I was looking at these lists, and it's being widely included in these lists. So once again, history like puts things in their right place, man. Mission Impossible 3 is by far the best of the Mission Impossible. It's not even close. The first one is incomprehensible. It has this script that's like completely impossible to penetrate. Written by actually a guy that's very well regarded, who wrote Chinatown and Tequila Sunrise. No, who cares about Tequila Sunrise? But his name is Robert Townsend.
Okay.
And he's a very highly respected screenwriter. But I always thought that his screenplays were very tough to penetrate, and this is an example of that. Mission Impossible 1. I've watched that movie about 5 times. I still don't know what the hell Job is and the knock list and all this stuff. It's all meaningless and senseless to me. And the second Mission Impossible 2 is like a bad anime.
Bro, don't. There were some great action scenes in that film.
Action sequences with Tom Cruise's hair in slow motion and
and also the soundtrack was amazing. Metallica, Limp Bizkit soundtrack was amazing, man.
Okay, yeah, but the soundtrack of the third one is way better because it's orchestrated by, it's composed by Michael Giacchino, who does a fantastic job. It's one of the few soundtracks I have on my playlist. And why is it? Yeah, it's Jar Jar Abrams' best film. It is definitely. And why is it so good? It's just perfectly paced, unrelenting in the way that it just grabs your attention and keeps going and going and going, and the set pieces keep getting bigger and bigger. That bridge scene is fantastic, man. That opening sequence is some of the best acting by Tom Cruise you'll ever see in a movie. He's acting in front of Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's doing his angry shtick. And Philip Seymour Hoffman was a fantastic actor, but he's getting outacted thoroughly by Cruise Control. and it's worth watching just for that beginning sequence alone. Um, and then yeah, you shoot. So you think it's like a countdown? It's like you have. I'm gonna count to 10, or I shoot this woman that you love.
Wait. Is this the film with the rabbits
Yeah,
plus?
the rabbit, which is another example of an ex machina, but a well done one, where it's well, it's not even an ex machina. It's another type of device. I think it's the maybe a red herring, not a red herring. I think it's an ex machina.
What's it called? It's oh gosh, I know it. Oh, MacGuffin.
MacGuffin. That's it, man.
MacGuffin. Yeah.
All right, so that's the
What
device
I'll give MI. Okay, I'll give MI3
that
this.
everybody has to get. Nobody knows what it is, but it's the thing that's going to resolve everybody's problems.
Okay, so what I'll give MI3, I'll give MI3 this because I wasn't a fan of the film. I thought it was a great trailer, a really great trailer, some great sequences, but I didn't. But what I'll give MI3 is this: is that it's laid the foundation that is still used today by the Mission Impossible films. Because
Oh, the
obviously,
next, yeah, for sure,
yeah,
because
because it's introduced Simon Pegg. It's introduced the whole. Basically, it's changed the aesthetic of the Mission Impossible series because 1 and 2 was very much a separate thing, and from 3 he sets the kind of standard as to how they would pretty much do
yeah,
missions with the team.
two are totally divorced from each other in terms of the aesthetic and everything. It's like two totally different universes, and so is 3 and onwards. But 3 established a sort of continuity and a shared aesthetic uh, from 3 onwards. You know, every subsequent movie after 3 is shared sort of like a universe. And anything prior to that, it was just like, oh, I'm a director with a very unique artistic sense. I'm going to impinge that sense onto this movie, and who cares about whoever comes after me? And that's what happened with John Woo, and that's what happened with Brian De Palma. But yeah, but that's not, dude. Rewatch Mission Impossible 3. It's another movie that has an elevator scene where he fucks up a couple of dudes, not a couple, like more than a couple, like 4 or 5, and he's tied up. He's tied up, and he has like this Hannibal Lecter style mask, right? But he's so badass, and they do it really well as well, that he manages to take out these high level operatives of the CIA in an elevator. And then it keeps going, just this breakneck speed, man. Goes to the bridge scene with like freaking F, what have yous, flying above
F-16s.
it, F-16s and shooting missiles and stuff. And he's getting the man, dude. It's an amazing flick and fantastic score as well. And
No, look,
it's up clever as well because it's got very clever twists.
I'll
And
give you this. Okay, Machine, look, this is also all I'll give you. I hate J.J. Abrams and I hate his films. This is his best film.
it is his best film.
This is his best film. But there's something very cheesy and just very off about J.J. Abrams. There's just something about the way he makes his films that rubs me the wrong way. And even if MI3 is his best film and it has some really good elements in it, yeah, I mean, put it this way. The 2 McCory films, I think, are better than MI3.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, watch MI3 again, please. Just watch it with a new perspective and willing to be surprised. Everything about MI3 is better than the McQuarrie films. I hate to tell you. Including, by the way, what's the name of that chick, the Asian chick who's smoking hot? Who features in it? McGee, or what's her name, man?
It's not Lucy Liu, is it?
No, it's not. Way hotter. Mission Impossible 3 cast.
Michelle, no, it's not Michelle Yeoh.
No. It's Ving Rhames, Billy Crudup, Michelle Monaghan. No, that's not her. Maggie Q. Maggie Q. Just the concept of the team, right?
Mm.
they introduced the concept of the team, which is what Mission Impossible was all about. I mean, it was a series originally from the 70s and 80s, which was a sort of well, it was like a crew, man, a crew that each of the crew had their specialty, right? One was like the technological expert, the other one was the leader, the other one was each had their specialty, and that was sort of nixed for the first two. They did it for a little bit in the Mission Impossible 1, but the crew got killed in the first mission. You remember where that Emilio Estevez was a part of the team?
Oh yeah.
You know, he gets punctured in the face with yeah. So that was like Brian De Palma being clever, where like, oh, you thought this was going to be like a team sort of thing. No, it's a star-driven tentpole film. You know, it's going to be the cruise control show from now on, and so it was, and then the second one was even that, like, but taken to the next level. And the third one finally reintroduced the idea of teams where everybody had a role to play, you know, from Ving Rhames to Simon Pegg to Maggie Q and that good-looking British dude, I don't remember his name. But it doesn't matter anyway. But that dynamic is what's interesting to see in the Mission Impossible 3, in the Mission Impossible franchise. And but it's okay that Cruise takes the spotlight and he's the one that's driving the action. But it's much more fun if you have a surrounding outfit around him that can complement him. You know, it's not just some super heroic figure that's totally unbelievable. And Ethan, what's his face?
Hunt.
And the last one was one of the worst movies I've ever seen, man. I'm sorry. The last one took Brian De Palma's incomprehensible script, right, and tried to fuse it with Mission Impossible 2's retarded action sequences, and made it into a movie. That was actually genuinely one of the worst movies I've ever seen, man. I'm sorry.
Blasphemy. Absolute blasphemy, man.
The last one with Superman.
Yeah, it was Henry Cavill was trash.
It's got one good scene, which is the bathroom fight scene. Everything else is incomprehensible, utterly, man.
So are you going to deny Tom Cruise climbing those helicopters?
That's fine. He can climb whatever he wants, man. It's like you know what the Mission Impossible franchise has devolved to is a series of Tom Cruise, stunts.
And that's why it's so good.
But it's not that good. I'll watch that on YouTube. I'll watch him do the thing. All right. He went up into the airplane and the other one. I can't even remember their names anymore. But I define them by the Tom Cruise stunt that was involved in each of them. So there's the one where he's latching onto the airplane as it takes off, right? There's the other one where he's going up the Burj Khalifa.
I think that's one that I haven't seen.
Which one?
The one where he climbs I think it's the tallest building in Hong Kong.
No, in Dubai. In Dubai.
I think that's the fourth one, isn't it? With the mixed chick.
Is it Ghost Protocol or it doesn't matter? It's the one where he climbs the thing, right? And then this last one is the one where what was the stunt that he did? Where he skydives. He skydives out of the
no. He skydives and the helicopter.
But hold on, he skydives out of this fucking plane, right? Okay. He did it for real. He actually went about the effort of actually doing it for real. And the stupid director makes it look fake. He does all these CGI alterations to the thing, so the whole effort is for naught. Because who cares if he did it for real?
No, look, it still looked cool. It looked cool. Okay, so this is my number 5, isn't it? Yeah, my number 5. So we're gonna change genres a little bit, and this may be one that may confuse people, but I think this one it deserves it. This may be a shocking one for some. Rush Hour 2.
That's shocking, man.
Rush Hour 2 might be one of the greatest comedies of all time. The first film was superb. Rush Hour 2 is a comedic masterpiece from the story, the jokes, the chemistry, the screenplay, the directing, the setup, the set pieces, completely flipping amazing. Because again, for me, I'm going to give comedy love because I think all genres need to be appreciated, and I think there isn't a comedy sequel that has so vastly improved on its predecessor the way that Rush Hour 2 did. Because a lot of people were mentioning one of my favorites, which is Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls. When Nature Calls is damn good. It's not that much better than the first. The first film is flipping good. So I think
First film
the
is
first and
fantastic.
second.
First film is fantastic. I rate the first film above the second one. Although the second one was really funny as well.
Hey, no, but it's quite close. Rush Hour 1 was a pretty good comedy film. Rush Hour 2 totally improves on Rush Hour. Even from the very first scene when they're in their flipping bathrobes and stuff, it is hilarious from the very beginning right to the very end, man. So, yeah, look, even when Chris Tucker is basically doing the whole Michael Jackson thing, and I'm
Dude,
understand.
it's
Just
shocking.
at the beginning now.
To tell you, I never watched those films. I thought they were like poor imitations of 48 Hours. You remember you remember that franchise that was, I think it was the first movie, 24 Hours.
Is it Eddie Murphy and
It was Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte?
So that,
You
so
see,
that, it seemed like a reiteration of this formula, right? That was sort of tired, and I'm like, yeah, it's got Jackie Chan, who I didn't think could carry a movie, right? Uh, because he doesn't know how to speak English that well, and then Chris Tucker. I knew Chris Tucker from Fifth Element, and I thought he was sort of annoying in Fifth Element, you know.
oh yeah,
But
I haven't even finished Fifth Elements. Like I can't finish that
you
film.
can't finish that movie, okay? But yeah, so it never drew me in, and I never watched any of them. So maybe they're fantastic. And
Wait,
I
wait, you've never seen any Rush Hour film?
none of them. No, no. I'll go watch them now. I'll go watch them. Can we do this? I'll go watch Rush Hour, right? If you watch Mission Impossible 3. No, Toy Story 3.
Wait, what?
I'll go watch Rush Hour if you watch Toy Story 3. And I'll go watch Rush Hour 2 if you watch Mission Impossible 3 again. Is that a deal or no?
Actually, you know what we can do? We can maybe do like offline watch where we can both, because we can both watch this at the same time because Toy Story. Oh God, Toy
Yeah.
Story.
No, please. You have to do it. It's one of the greatest. I rate it as one of the greatest films of all time,
So
man.
you're saying that you can skip over Toy Story 2 and just go to Toy Story 3?
The what? Sorry, pardon. Oh, you
So
can. I mean, you definitely skip Toy Story 2. There's no reason for Toy Story 2 to exist. There's one character named Jesse that's sort of central to Toy Story 3, but you don't really need to. That's introduced in Toy Story 2, but you don't need to watch 2 for that.
okay, okay. So yeah. So look, man. That's so. What is your your number 4?
Now I'm curious about Rush Hour, man. I'm actually gonna do that, though. You know, I'm
No,
not
no,
fucking
no, you should. It's very funny.
number 4. Number 4, huh? That's funny. X2. That I know you don't like because we discussed this already. But X2 is probably the greatest comic book film of all time for me, where they finally understood the spirit of.
Wait. Easy, 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 easy. I have Disney Plus,
Uh-huh.
and because I've got Disney Plus, my mission is to obviously finally finish X-Men, the cartoon series, watch Spider-Man again, and watch some of the films I haven't watched, which include X2. So
Watch
don't
it.
let me explain. Let me explain. Let me explain. I'm a huge X-Men fan.
Okay.
I didn't like the first X-Men film because the casting of Storm, Cyclops, and Wolverine was trash.
Wolverine wasn't trash. Wolverine was a great job.
He's short.
I know he's
Now,
short. I know he's short.
okay, so in my school, so when I was in school, I walk into this guy wasn't my friend. I just walked into his room and he's watching X2 on his laptop. So I was like, okay, look, let me watch it. I watched the opening sequence up until Wolverine and I leave the room. I'm
Okay,
like,
wait,
nah.
with Nightcrawler?
Yeah,
You didn't like the Nightcrawler opening sequence?
this is just, I'm going to watch it. It's just this young HH. Young HH. I go in, I view, I look, I turn around and I leave. I'm like, this isn't me. But I will, as an adult who is more mature, sit down, machine, Saturday. Saturday I'm going to do a film marathon tomorrow. I'm going to watch about 5 films tomorrow. So X2 is going to be part of my film marathon for tomorrow. I'm going to sit down and watch X from beginning to end.
Good, man. Fantastic, man. It's great. It's so I can't speak all that much about it, but I'll say this: it's got. I agree with you that X1 was a very flawed, sort of boring film. Really, not even flawed. It's just boring. It's just tepid. You know, I was expecting so much more. Everything from the CGI to Sabretooth's casting. That was like they really bricked it up with Sabretooth. It was a fantastic villain in his own right, and they went to like cast some low-rent wrestling dude that doesn't even speak a word, I don't think, or like maybe says 1 or 2 speaking lines in the movie. Rogue, I thought was miscast as well. Rogue is like the Southern Belle that's very voluptuous and probably the most voluptuous of all the ex-girls, And they picked Anna Paquin, who's very sort of nerdy, and not at all the rogue that you think of when you watch the cartoons or read the comics. But Cyclops, I thought it was good casting, man. Cyclops is sort of like the straight dude, the straight arrow, the leader, the Leonardo of what Leonardo is in Turtles is what Cyclops is, basically. So he's the Boy Scout. He's the Boy Scout that everybody loves to hate, always does things by the book and everything. And Wolverine is his foil. Wolverine is the opposite of that. He's the guy that's the rebellious character. He's angry and he's the Raphael. What Raphael is in TMNT is what Wolverine is, and what Cyclops is what Leonardo is in TMNT. That's the sort of parallel that I can draw. But X2 really finally understood. The thing I thought they understood the best was, first of all, Wolverine finally came into his own. All the characters came into their own in X2. You're gonna love it, man. Especially somebody.
Wait! Don't say too much. Don't say too much. I'm gonna watch it tomorrow. I will watch it tomorrow.
Magneto kills it absolutely. Ian McKellen as Magneto is fantastic. There's this character that's played by Brian Cox. His name is Stryker.
Yeah. I've heard. Great actor. Great actor.
Fantastic job as well. And they sort of. I'll just tell you what. If you're familiar with the comics, some of the elements that they bring. Just some of the elements. Just some of the elements. Weapon X. I don't know if you know what that is.
No, I know what Weapon X is. Weapon X is.
Okay, that's some of that.
You've set things nicely. You've set the table well. Now let me eat and let me see whether I will swallow or spit out this food. Dosbell says, Tier 1, thank you for the super chat. Tier 1 content from both of you. Much love. Bro, look, man, we make a great team, man. We were here to provide you with that good quarantine content.
And let me just thank you so much, Dr. Bell. I'm a big fan of yours as well. But I have to say something. X3 is unfairly maligned as well. X3, which is done by Brett Ratner, who was this director that was cool to hate on for however long, and by the fandom. Um, but he's really a very competent director. Gets the job done, and I thought X3 was decent, man. It was not bad at all. I mean, they portrayed a very dear saga to comic book fans, which is the Phoenix Saga, right? And he did it in a very he took quite a strong departure from the Phoenix Saga because they couldn't do what the MCU did with Thanos.
You see, X3 ain't as bad as they say it is.
Oh, you watched it then?
Yeah, I watched X3 in the cinema. Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. No, it's absolutely not. The scenes with Wolverine and Phoenix are fantastic, man. With the dark,
Very good effects, really good effects.
not even good. But what I'm talking about, the acting sequences where, like, she has like something dark in her that could like mess up everything, right?
Mm.
It's sort of like an exorcist sort of demon that's overtaken her, and Wolverine's in love with her, so he just wants to know like what the hell is going on, right? And she's like, kill me now because I'm going to kill you all. Basically, I have this cosmic entity inside me that's world destroying. And if you know the comics, you understand that added layer to the Phoenix like entity. But if you don't, you're just watching the movie and you know that it's a very powerful mutant, right? But they couldn't get into the galactic stuff with the Shi'ar Empire and all that stuff. That was never going to be feasible to do in one movie. So I think they approached it in the best way possible. If they were going to do the Dark Phoenix and tackle that character, the best way that they could have done so was the way that they did it in X3. It has some flaws. It has some cheesy shit with the angel and I can't remember what else actually at the moment. I even enjoy the Juggernaut. The Juggernaut is played by
yeah, I'm the Juggernaut.
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. I even enjoy that Juggernaut. Although the one,
no, it was cool. It was actually it was good. It was good casting. Wait, I wanna. Blade Runner 2049 isn't on this list, but I love this comment. Take out Anna de Armas and Jared Leto, and Blade Runner 2029 would be a fantastic movie. I've said this many times. I don't know what we feel about this. Anna de Armas is a crap actress. She's very attractive. That's why she has roles. All well and good. I don't give a damn how attractive you are. You're the crap. Or you're not crap. And I don't care. She's a garbage actress and she was crap in that film. Jared Leto overacted in his role. It was too much, way too forced, and he tried way too hard for his performance. There are other story issues, but Blade Runner 2049 had the foundation of a fantastic sequel. For a fantastic sequel, but Denis Villeneuve just made some very poor choices that let the film down. So,
yeah, shout out to the Sentinel, who think Kelsey Grammer as Beast is the best casting of the entire Fox era.
great casting. Great casting.
It's almost as
Great
good.
casting.
It's almost as good as it's nearly as good as Professor X, as Patrick. What's his name? Patrick Stewart, who is in the dream castings when people were like talking up the X-Men being made and stuff when it was still in sort of the developmental stage. Everybody, I think across the board, when they thought of Professor X, their first choice was Patrick Stewart.
Well, no, and also I'll say, you see, I don't know whether you think I'm crazy. I've always said Jeff Bridges as Magneto. I've never really felt, and look, Ian McKellen is a super actor.
He's a very good
I've
actor.
never felt that he was right for Magneto.
Maybe I like Jeff Bridges as Magneto actually. The
Jeff
hair,
Bridges,
but the thing is, I think that Bridges, who I like a lot, lacks the regal quality of Magneto. But I like that choice a lot. Really
I think you're underestimating what Jeff Bridges can do. I think if you tell Jeff Bridges that he wants something regal and everything, I think Jeff Bridges can give you that kind of quality, because the guy is a versatile actor when he wants to be. So yeah.
And there's another thing, which is like Magneto is a supervillain. These are comic books.
Yeah.
Magneto that we know has a certain bulk and physicality to it. Ian McKellen's a frail guy, you
That's the
know.
thing. It's like I think in Ian McKellen they were missing the kind of imposing nature of what
Yeah, you can
Magneto is to be.
even if it's like a muscle suit or whatever that you put Jeff Bridges on, you can believe him as like a bulked up sort of dude, older
Hmm.
dude, like bulked up, and McKellen, no, he's just very frail. But he dude, in the next two, man, kills it.
Okay, okay, all right, man. So my number four is what many people would put as their number one, at least one of their number ones and everything. But it makes the number four on this list. Godfather 2. Um, I'm happy that I watched this recently. Um, because Godfather 2 is amazing. It's not as amazing as people think.
I'm
People
glad to hear that.
saying Godfather 1 and 2 are the greatest films ever made.
No,
No, they're not. They are one of the best films for their genre. I can't call them one of the greatest films ever made. No, that's just people being obsessed with loving Italians kill each other and commit crime, and because people want to be Italian mobsters, that's why you overestimate them. They're
also
not
this
the
is
greatest
the
ever
first one
made.
to do so.
Hmm?
And the Godfather franchise was really the first one to really start that genre of Italian mob movies, right?
Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, it was the first one. So people are like, what? We've never seen anything like this.
Right.
But despite that, Godfather 2, like again, keeping with sequels and what I know how I critique them. Godfather 1, superb film, amazingly acted, and again was boom, a flipping game changer for the genre. So what Coppola with Mario Puzo was able to do was wow, the way he expanded the story where we're going to go into the past and the present, and we're going to tell the story of who was Vito Corleone, and also we're going to now tell a very complex story and a very intricate story, looking at father and son and how and the kind of connective tissue that the father and the son have. Um, Amazing performance by Al Pacino, insane. Amazing performance by De Niro, who said he literally watched Brando in Godfather 1. And it was an amazing thing to see how De Niro was able to channel the essence of Brando's performance in a younger version. You know, from his mannerisms, his look, his walk, his acting, boom, all amazing. So, yeah, man. I mean, it's it is a and Godfather 2 is the best film in the of all three. Godfather 2 is a better film than Godfather 1. Godfather 1 just is more iconic than Godfather 2. But Godfather 2 as a film overall is a fantastic film. Fantastic film.
Did you know something, man? Did you know that John Cazale, who played Fredo, I believe in the Godfather movies,
Mm.
is regarded by De Niro and Pacino and Streep, who actually she was married to him
Yeah, they were together, yeah.
when he was alive, as like the greatest actor like alive back when he was doing his thing.
Oh no, no, yeah, like
That's
hence
strange
why
because you don't see it in my
yeah, no, 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 but hence why I wish he had lived longer to see what he could have done because everybody had a really close relationship with him. And they all said that this guy is an amazing actor. You
yeah.
know, everyone said that he was an amazing actor. Because I think his last film was Deer Hunter, I think.
Deer
Deer
Hunter.
Hunter had been his last film was with Streep as well. Um, but yeah, no, no.
There was this entire Vanity Fair piece I read on John Cazale and how like he was on another level. Like at least he was an actor's actor that everybody could appreciate like what he did. But it's not, sometimes you can be that and then it doesn't translate on screen to the audiences. You just don't. You can have a tremendous presence on set and it doesn't translate to the screen. But yeah, that's just a little interesting tidbit I felt I would throw out there. In
Yeah,
terms
no,
of
no, no.
movies, I think The Godfather is a superior movie. This one, I have to watch it again. The Godfather 1 and 2, much like the Star Wars movies, are movies that are dependent, my appreciation of them are dependent on my mood, right? I watch them every so often. These are movies you must watch at least some 15 times over the course of your life, right?
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes I think, oh, I get it. Oh, this New Hope, it really is a masterpiece. And then other times I'm like, oh, really? Oh, boring. And same with The Godfather and Godfather 2. I waver between what I think of them. Sometimes I think masterpieces. Sometimes I think, yeah, whatever. And the last time I watched Godfather 2, I felt I wasn't feeling it. I especially wasn't feeling the Cuba element, the weird political subplot. You remember that?
Yeah, that's with Al Pacino's like acting teacher.
Really?
I can't remember his name. Is it Stella? It's not Stella Adler.
No, it can't be. But she, but the acting teacher participates in the Cuba scenes, is what you're saying?
yeah, because he's a famous. Let me no Lee Skarsgård. No, sorry, Lee Strasberg.
Strasbourg.
Strasberg, because there's a thing called I think the Strasberg method or
Yes,
something.
of course, yeah.
Yeah, so basically Strasberg was
Yeah, that's New York, just as Stella Adler is. It's between Strasbourg and Adler. Those are the main schools of acting. But I didn't know that. That's interesting. But yeah, I I just wasn't engaged enough. I think the Brando presence really is missing in the second one, And I think overall, and this is actually would be seen as sort of completely blasphemous for most cinephiles. I would actually say that I rate Sofia Coppola a little bit above Francis Ford. Because she gave us Lost in Translation, which I think is every bit as good as anything that Francis Ford Coppola has ever given us. She's given us Marie Antoinette, which is a fantastic movie. She's given us Virgin Suicides was a great film as well. And sorry, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? I want to know what the chat thinks, man. Come on, back me up a little bit.
so no, please live chat. I would love your views on Machine saying that he is willing to rate Sophia Lost in Translation Marie Antoinette Coppola
Yeah.
ahead of
No,
Francis.
just
Ahead of Francis, Apocalypse Now, Dracula, Godfather 1, Godfather 2, Coppola. Machine, that might be the wildest take you've ever had. I mean, I would accept Batman Returns, I'll accept it. Cool, I accept Batman Returns, I accept Mission Impossible 3. Sophia Coppola?
yeah, I'll tell you why. There's the so Coppola. What did Coppola do? Godfather 1, 2, 3.
Apocalypse Now?
I don't like Apocalypse.
Dracula?
I don't like Apocalypse Now, man.
Bro, whether you like it or not, nothing Sofia Coppola is sniffing Dracula, Apocalypse Now, or the two Godfather films.
I think Apocalypse Now is the greatest anticlimax in movie history. Because they talk up General Kurtz, right, as some kind of transcendently charismatic figure. The whole movie, it's like you get Hopper and everybody else like going, man, when you meet this guy, man, this guy's gonna blow your mind, man. He's talking about next level stuff, and you're like, oh wait, so this is like some transcendently charismatic figure that managed to convince an entire horde of people that he's some kind of godlike figure. And you're all right. Let's check this out. And then you get to the scene in this Brando riffing. Basically, he's like ad-libbing.
which is the most amazing riff you've ever seen in your life, and you know it.
But it's an ad-lib, like a blue bullet, diamond bullet going through you. And he refuses to be lit. That's why he was super fat, like when he was shooting that scene. So he refused to be lit from entirely, right? So they only light like this portion, and he's just like he must have dropped acid before that scene for sure. Because you're like, all right, man, okay. None of it makes any sense, you know. It's engaging because it's Brando saying it, but it's not engaging enough for you to think that this guy could convince a bunch of Vietnamese people that he's some kind of god amongst insects, you know. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Like a cult leader is, you know, you have to make sense.
It's like we are on complete opposite sides, because that's one of the greatest climaxes. That's the greatest climax in any film, based on how it's built up and what Brando delivered for that scene. I was like, no, this is the greatest build up and the greatest climax probably to any film I've ever seen, you know. But I digress. Let's
You know that the shoot of that film was disastrous completely.
very tough shoot. Very, very
And that
what's it
scene in
called? Like
particular,
Martin Sheen said that he went through some difficult times, you know, in that show, because he was going through some demons and everything in that film, so it was tough. All right, what is your number 3, bro?
number 3.
Don't put like Mary Poppins 2 or something, man. Please don't Mary Poppins 2, please don't.
Of course not, man. I'm going to tell you what I have, man, and I think you'll agree with me on this one. It's Back to the Future 2.
Oh, okay.
Mary Poppins 2.
I mean, look, it's not Mary Poppins 2 much, so
Can we give the Sentinel some love, please? Because he says, "Machine." I agree with you on that. The last 15 minutes of Apocalypse Now left me going, "That's it, dude." It's
wild.
the greatest anticlimax of all time, man. But
No. You're wild, man. You're wild. It's quality, man.
okay,
That-
let's get to Back to the Future and
all
then
right.
the rest overly. So Back to the Future, the original, for me, is a superior film, slightly. But why is this one of the greatest sequels of all time? Because the first one was so fantastic that you would never think that the second one would even sniff it. And not only did it sniff it for many, it's they regard it as a superior film. And I think that the choices that they made are to this day enduring, and just the iconography that they put together. You know, from the hoverboard to that jacket that he wears, it's all puffed out, and then he presses a button.
Even how they depict the future as well, the
Yeah,
almanac.
fantastic, man. It's everything's fantastic about that, and about the movie. And the depiction of the future with the 3D and the shark coming out of the billboard and stuff. That's what you'd imagine. To this day, that influences my vision of the future so much that to this day, I'm expecting a little Back to the Future in the present day. You know? It's about time, man. We're getting late for it, but in some senses, we've evolved more, and in other senses, we're still behind. But one of the things that's really clever about that movie, and actually prescient, is that they depicted a Donald Trump-like figure as president of Biff as president of the world that they inhabit. You know, yeah, Biff, like, basically, for those who haven't watched Back to the Future, the movie in question, he gets a hold of this almanac, right? And he creates a fortune out of it because he starts betting on baseball games and just becomes unfathomably wealthy because of it. and through that wealth, he becomes elected president, I believe, right? Yeah, president of the United States. And Biff was
But we don't give too much away because
no, but
how
he was
it
the main
happens.
antagonist in the first movie. So, like, there's all these recurring characters, all these different interpretations of characters in the Back to the Future franchise, depending on era and what and the choices that they made and how it altered the continuum. And it's just very clever like that. I don't, time messing with time and time travel is always very iffy. It's hardly ever done right because it's just too much of a head scratcher. But the way the Back to the Future did it is
Amazingly well.
so
Amazingly well.
clever that it's that it, first of all, it never becomes overly confounding. You're always in on everything that's happening.
And it isn't too contrived and it isn't too complex.
No,
You
it
never
is.
you never left feeling confused as to things they don't go overtly with the jargon. Even when Doc says a lot of jargon stuff, the film still does it like Zemeckis and Bob Gale still explain it in layman terms for the audience to
Yeah.
consume it.
No, sure, absolutely. It's about character. The movies are about character. That's why they work. You know, the time travel element is just it's the premise and it's what makes it compelling in the end. But I know it's what draws you in, but what really keeps you there and grounds you and really keeps your attention is how solid the characters are and how
Super.
yeah, and how like the Doc first one of the greatest duos of all time is Doc and Marty McFly.
It's I would probably say in terms of chemistry and how well drawn the characters are, it's the best duo in any film.
It's up there, certainly up there, because it's this kooky like it's this totally kooky like crazy scientist archetype, right?
Mm.
Paired up with this kid that's just trying to get like his foothold in the world. He's barely broken out of puberty, basically.
Mm.
Marty McFly character. He's still trying to discover himself, and he's pitted in these extraordinary circumstances. As it's like it's a journey of self discovery. At the same time as it's a fantastical journey throughout the time continuum. That's what's fantastic about it. And the first one I will always rate above it because it's got so many funny things like his mom trying to hit on him and shit.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, Calvin Klein. Calvin
Trying to, like she almost like rapes him basically. It's like he almost gets me too'd by his own mom. And that final scene with the guitar, like where he plays the concert, he gets
Mm.
overexcited and he starts going, and then all of a sudden people are like, they're all staring at him, and he's like, I guess that's a little too ahead of your time.
Yeah. Like, it's like, yeah, I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet, but your kids are gonna love it.
Yeah, but your kids are gonna love it. Line, man.
Okay, all right. Look, man. One of my favorite films, man. That is a great entry, man. So moving on, this I don't think is in many people's list, and this may be a film that many people, may not really ride with, but this is easily one of the greatest sequels of all time. The Matrix Reloaded. Now, before you shock yourselves and you go crazy, look, I am.
You did it for my Marie Antoinette, and
No. Basically, look.
but
Let
that's
me.
that's even more shocking, dude. Like
No,
actually,
when
Matrix
I first saw,
is more
okay,
shocking.
okay, this is just for my. When I first saw the Matrix, I wasn't a fan. I was like, I don't understand what's going on. I don't know what the hell is happening. Why is this dude bold? All right, I'm out. Then I watched The Matrix Reloaded, and because of The Matrix Reloaded, is why I was able to go back and appreciate The Matrix. Reloaded literally improves upon and builds upon every single thing from the Matrix. The fighting scenes are better. The story is a lot deeper. The special effects and everything gets taken to the very next level.
I
And
heard
and
you say
also, no,
that's ludicrous.
also this look, man, this is my number three. Let me land.
All right.
The stakes and how this film ends and how this film completely turns everything on its head from what you saw in the first Matrix is why this is a superb sequel because it raises the game expo flipping exponentially on part one. The less said about Revolutions, the better. But for me, Reloaded has the greatest fight scene in any film that we've ever seen, and it has some of the most amazing
What is
visuals
it? Which
we've ever
one is
seen.
it? Don't tell me it's the one where he's flipping around with a stick and it's like a CGI Keanu Reeves with really poor CGI. You mentioned better special effects. This is one of the worst, notoriously bad special effects scenes of
Bro,
all.
those special effects they still hold up. No, I'm
No,
not.
not a chance, man. Are you?
I'm talking about the chateau scene. It's the chateau scene. So
It's the chateau scene.
yeah. It's where he fights the Merovingians men in the kind of like castle place, man.
I don't remember, but I
Incredible.
towards like this thing being seared into my head of like that's one of the worst special effects I've ever seen. Where it's like Keanu with a stick fighting 20,000 Mr. X's or whatever his name is, Hugo Weavings, in the same scene. And I was like, this is like something out of a bad PS2 game. Like this is bad PS2 CGI. And it's still notoriously bad. Dude, I linked it in the chat. That's like machine, you should know this was coming from.
No. Yeah. So no, look, I will defend Reloaded all the way from now until I leave this earth. Unfortunately,
But actually,
oh
Infinity's Limit agrees with you. He says
no,
the
no,
action is
no, no,
insane.
no, no. This is my boy Tony B, man. Like this film is a grossly underappreciated film.
But
And
if you tell me the
it is
action
still at ahead of its time. It is still ahead of its time.
but if you tell me the action sequence in that car, there's like a car chase scene. I remember, sort of.
There are too
Uh,
many scenes.
huh?
There are too many scenes. Like it is the greatest car chase scene of all time. This car chase scene has Morpheus with his samurai sword slicing a samurai sword in half. It has flipping and Aiden's jumping from one car to another car. It has these twin guys going from one vehicle to one vehicle. It has Trinity with a flipping bike going against traffic with oncoming cars coming towards her. It has Neo flying from flipping Venus all the way through, and the film is insane. And it has one of the best endings ever in how it completely turns everything of what you thought the film was about on its head. Super film, superb. Reloaded, man.
Okay.
All right, what's your number two, man? Let's keep this going, man. Number two.
Number two, you ready for this, man?
This better not be
No,
Harry Potter two, man.
it's Ghostbusters 2016.
Then we'll end the stream
Yeah,
if good. No, literally, like I was about to click end broadcast now, so that's a pile of
I
trash.
hate the idea over there because actually they were going.
Yeah.
HH is probably going to choose Ghostbusters 2016.
You must be sick.
Yeah. All right. So my real choice is Before Sunset, which is part of this trilogy of films, which were directed by Richard Linklater. Two of which are fantastic. Another one, which is the third, called Before Midnight, which is lackluster and really didn't needed to get made. But the first one is, why are these films fantastic? Because they're romantic films that are believable. You know, they they basically follow this couple, this budding couple, falling in love with one another. In the first movie, in Before Sunrise, it's in Austria. It's like this American guy that meets this French chick, and they hit it off. And it's like it's all directed sort of not live action, as if it was like real time, in real time. It's not like there's cuts over here and then it's everything is basically one take, sort of like what they did with this new war movie that Sam Mendes directed. I forget what the 19 something, 1918, right? 1918. But
Oh, no, machine. I'm just waiting until you tell me why you have Before Sunset as the second greatest sequel of all time. I'm waiting.
no, dude. It's not. Listen, forget about the ordering, right? There, it's in my top 10 for sure. So, the first one ends with this budding couple probably never seeing each other again. Like saying goodbye. She's going back to France. He's going back to America. It's there's a sour, bittersweet. It's a bittersweet ending. You feel like these people are star-crossed lovers meant to be together, and it's not going to happen because that's not what reality is like. It's not always meant to happen, and that's how the movie ends, with a bittersweet feeling. And then in the second one, it's very ingenious because the guy becomes a writer, and is doing like a book tour in Paris, and Julie Delpy, who's the actress that played whatever the character was in the first one, goes to see him, and they rediscover themselves, right? And this is all in real time. And they get to chatting and everything, and he's married with kids. And through this chat, which is unbelievably relatable and human and realistic in the way that they do these dialogues, you discover that things aren't going so well, and slowly their passion becomes rekindles, but they fight against it first because she doesn't want to be that chick, and him because he's married and doesn't want to be that guy either. And the movie ends in a very poignant sort of way where it doesn't give anything away, it doesn't say anything specific, but you realize that like he's ready to make that step. He's gonna be with her for the rest of his life and leave his wife and kids and everything because she's the girl for him. And then really cool, like she's dancing to Nina Simone. And dude, just watch the movies, man. They're fantastic.
No, I will. I will know because people look, because I'm a really big fan of Ethan Hawke. I like Ethan Hawke,
and it's a great, it's a masterclass of performance. It's like he's actually like always very, very good in the movies. Julie Delpy, she's up and down. Sometimes she's very good, other times she seems like she's
because she's the co-writer of the film, isn't she?
Yeah, she's the co-writer of the film. I think she's she's good artistically and intelligent, and I'm not taking anything away from her in that regard. But in terms of her performance, she's patchier than Ethan Hawke. Ethan Hawke is always on it. And so watch the first one, and then watch the second one, which is a superior film. So anytime a great film is succeeded by a superior film, for me that marks a fantastic sequel. And it's a rarity, as you know. It's a rarity for very good films to be followed by superior.
That's the mark of a great sequel.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. So we're almost there, man. Now my number 2 is most people's number 1. So because I say, wait, no, this is and for so many people, they say this is the greatest sequel of all time, and I normally have held this as the greatest sequel of all time, but it just doesn't make it. T2. T2 Judgment Day is, for me, first of all, just as a film, I feel it's one of the greatest films ever made. 100% one of the greatest films ever made. Terminator, just as Machine said, the mark of a great sequel is if you're able to follow a quality first film. That first film of Terminator is a horror classic. That was a really good film. T2 took things to the next flipping level. And from excellent action direction, a superb story, a great performance from um oh gosh, Linda Hamilton.
I thought you were going to say Schwarzenegger.
But Schwarzenegger does his thing, man.
I mean, he's on
Schwarzenegger does his thing. So I think that for me, just what T2 was able to do, its impact in 1991 was just incredible. And that is why people view it as one of the greatest sequels of all time because
interesting, man, that the tonal shift between the shift in tone between T1 and T2
huge.
is similar. It's similar to the Alien and Alien 2. Aliens. Wouldn't you say? Because
It's exactly the same.
the T1 was basically like a straight 80s
Horror.
sort
Yeah.
of not horror, like suspense with horror like elements.
Thriller horror.
Yeah. And then like T2 just opened it up and became much more
There's just much more of like, okay, this is like a blockbuster action film now.
yeah, like an epic action. And it's the same thing. It's the same transition between Alien and Aliens.
But the thing was that I think it's unfair to sort of just view it as just a great action movie. T2 is a great film. T2 for me is just a great because it's about a man and it's about a boy and his machine, a boy and his robot, so the robot and the boy. And I just think the way how the amazing chemistry between the John Connor and the T800, I just think it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's simple. It's effective. It works really well. And look, I watched T2 like about a month ago. You go through the emotions and you are right there going through the journey with the character, man. And I just think that's just what makes it absolutely
Did you
money.
ever watch that 80s movie called Short Circuit?
I know it, but I never watched it. We had it in our house on VHS, but I never watched it.
Yeah, that's a tearjerker as well, especially as a kid watching it. And I think that's what Wall-E, the Pixar movie, lifted the look and inspired its like the Wall-E character off of was from Short Circuit. But anyway, yeah, that's about a boy and his robot. The robot gets messed up towards the end. That's the tear jerking part, but yeah, it's similar. I remember thinking there was actually certain parallels between T2 and Short Circuit, oddly enough. But yeah, do I enjoy T2 immensely? Yes, I do. I've seen it multiple times. Um, but I don't rate it quite as highly as everybody else does. In terms of actioners, like Arnold Schwarzenegger actioner for me, it's Predator is the mecca. But and T2 is probably actually I would say I enjoyed True Lies more than T2.
No. True Lies is as decent. It's not as good as T2. And you know it.
That scene with where he gets like the F2 or whatever. Huh? That's an amazing scene, man.
No. True Lies is amazing.
Yeah.
True Lies is amazing. Okay, man. So we're now here right now. Guys, thank you for whoever has joined us here right now. Remember, if you're here, hit that like button. Hit that like button, man. If you're new, come and subscribe. This is it. Remember, guys, this is our view, and our view is Bible. Our view is set in stone, and our view is definitive. So it is what it is. Deal with it. So, machine, what's in your view is the greatest sequel ever made?
Can I? I just remembered the movie I could have included in my top 10, man, which is the TMNT 2 movie, The Secret of the Use, which I loved as a kid. I have to rewatch it again, but I remember thinking, loving the first one, which is a classic, but thinking it was a bit maybe too dark, and the second one sort of loosened it up a little bit, but still retained the dark elements. You know what I mean? Without going overly goofy.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, and I loved those two characters that they came up with, which aren't quite Bebop and Rocksteady, but they're basically homologues of them. Anyway, my number one entry. Is everybody curious or not so much?
Oh,
Are you
no, no,
curious?
no. Everyone is bloody curious, man, because if it's Mary Antoinette, I was also going to Sofia Coppola film, and then we're going to have problems, bro.
No, but I wasn't sure whether to include this or not because I'm not sure if it's a straight up sequel or if it's a soft reboot or reimagination. But anyway, it's Mad Max Fury Road for me. I'm going to count it as a sequel to the first three films, right?
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
Even though it doesn't feature Mel Gibson anymore, it's still the same character.
But is this a Mad Max film or a Furiosa film?
Well, but we've had this conversation before, man. Regardless of whether it's a Mad Max film or a Furiosa film, it's a film, and it's a film in the Mad Max franchise, and it's a film I rate extremely high. For me, it's the great action extravaganza of the last 10 years.
Actually, do you want to hear something that people won't like to hear?
Yeah, sure.
Mad Max 2 Road Warrior is better than this film.
You have an axe to grind against this film, right? I remember.
No, 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 no. All else, no. Machine is
Oh,
very simple. I've only watched this film once, and I will only watch this film once because I was pissed off because I was like, this had the elements to be one of the greatest films I've ever seen in my life. It's a Furiosa film. Mad Max is a side chick in his own film.
it's mired a little bit. It's not. I wouldn't say it's mired, but it's got behind its whole thing is a political agenda, and that's what maybe angers you a little bit. The whole premise of the film is that it's a world that all of a sudden has become consumed by toxic masculinity. You know, they basically took the post-apocalyptic world of that Mad Max had set up, the previous Mad Max movies, and gave it a twist. And all of a sudden, it's like it's about toxic masculinity, and that's why there's so many cars and motors, and people are going like constantly. They've given themselves over to their urges, and women are just like incubators. Basically, they're just made to procreate with, and this guy who's the apotheosis of this toxic masculinity. Uh, what is his name again? You remember his name, man?
Who?
The guy that they're all like that has like an entire
Who?
coterie of women that just serve him.
Yeah, I can't remember the dude's name. I've only was saying this in the film once, man. I was too pissed off.
Mad Max Fury Road villain.
He's got a cool name though. It is a cool name.
And Morton Joe, yeah, it is a cool name. Yeah,
Oh,
Morton.
awesome show.
So Morton Joe is the personification of toxic masculinity, basically, and he's trying to get a worthy successor to breed a worthy successor out of these very attractive young ladies who he uses only as incubators for his spawn. But he keeps like getting abortions basically as either somebody who's mentally functional but is physically incapable, like that guy that's ridden to his wheelchair, or somebody that's physically capable but mentally infunctional or dysfunctional, which is that muscle-bound creature that you catch a few glimpses of. But it's like the reason why I enjoy it so much is because it's got an unrelenting pace. I know people criticize it for not having much story, um, at least in the traditional sense. But the world that it sets up and the things that it sort of brews just underneath the surface and in the background, the things that it alludes to are more evocative than many stories, than many very richly drawn out stories, full of dialogue and world building and all of this. They build the world through certain visual elements and in very subdued ways that I really appreciate. And it's just a fantastic achievement when you think that the director directed this movie that's as slick as any movie you'll ever see. And
And he's like in his and he's in his 70s or so.
no, he's in his late 70s. It's absolutely crazy, man.
No. I mean, look, it's basically Fury Road annoys me because it's so good. But if it just focused on Mad Max, it would be one of the best films I've ever seen in my life. So, objectively, I have no qualms because objectively, it is a exceptional piece of work. Junkie XL, great soundtrack. That soundtrack from Junkie XL, quality, man. So no, look, man, I'm not.
Which one? Is that in
No,
Fury?
yeah, Junkie XL did the soundtrack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good soundtrack. Or remember the guy with the guitar?
Oh, I love it, man. With the flame throwing guitar, yeah, for sure. And you know that movie is all about the women.
Yeah,
Really,
no, it is, it is, it is.
the movie or the women. It's women in a world of piggish men that are really like disgusting, and they're the only like sort of pure entities is the are the feminine. But regardless of the political agenda that underlies the film, which I abhor just as much as you do, I'm assuming, and I'm against the fact you can't when art is good, when it's well made.
Yeah.
It's well made, man. You have to tip your hat. All right, there's propaganda behind it, maybe, but well done.
Okay. So before I reveal my number one, I've had to make a little bit of a change. Beverly Hills Cop 2 is getting taken out. This is my real number five. So my number five is John Wick Chapter 2.
Interesting.
I don't know how I forgot about this thing, but it has to be in here. So John Wick Chapter 2 is my number five. So that is just a little change into the whole thing because I think John Wick 1, quality film. John Wick Chapter 2, superb, amazing, exceptional piece of work. So sorry, this is in. So guys, my number one. For me, a sequel, this entry, I think, is the perfect example of this being the greatest sequel of all time because it came after what is considered a classic and arguably a perfect film. But in my view, Machine says it's not as good as the original. I believe it is better than the original. And because it is better than the original, there is no debate whatsoever of this easily being a sequel because it is impossible to think that this film somehow improved upon what was a perfect film. It's still a perfect film with one of the best endings ever. My number one, guys, Back to the Future 2.
Oh.
So, yeah, I mean, look, Machine pretty much said all the key points, but one little thing, though, is this was made by mistake because Crispin Glover is to thank for Back to the Future 2 because Back to the Future 2 was supposed to take place in the 60s. So Martin and everything was supposed to go back and visit their parents in the 60s. But there was a contract dispute. and Crispin Glover wanted a lot more money, and they were not willing to pay him as much money as Crispin Glover wanted.
Which is crazy, which is absolutely
Yeah,
crazy.
so basically, so because that happened, they were like, we have to think of a different story because we can't have him in it. And we can't have the parents in it. So we've got to think of a different story. So the whole thing of him and how he was featured in the film all came through because of Crispin Glover not wanting to be in the film. So the whole aspect of them going into the future and the past and so forth came about by them rewriting the story based on Crispin Glover. And again, the the script of this is insane. And for me, I'm one of those guys that I like to take risks. Part one is a perfect film. It's a perfect film. But I love how they said, no, you can always improve upon perfection. And the risks they took and how difficult it was to set a story in the present, the past, and the future and combine all three storylines so effectively well. I think for me, it improves upon what you had in part one. So as a sequel, nothing is sniffing or even coming close to what Back to the Future 2 did. You know, so
What was the date that Back to the Future 2 took place in? Supposedly the futuristic date. You said it was 2015, but that's
it might be because I know 1955 was the past,
this one.
1982 or something was the present. I think it might have been 2015. I think.
1982, man. That's when I was born, man. Can you imagine?
Revealing your age. Actually, no, that's
I don't care about revealing my age.
yeah, that's the same. Yeah, same year as my sister.
Nice, man. Nice.
Yeah, 1982. Yeah, same year as my sister. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
look, man.
I have to tell you, it's the best vintage. You know,
Well, is the best what?
it's the best vintage. It's the best. You know, people that came out of '82 are special. I feel.
No, 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 no. Look, if you were born in the 80s, you have that. You see,
I think
us 80s people, man, we just have that special thing that these 90s and 2000 guys don't understand, man. You
absolutely.
know,
For me, it's the greatest era of all time. But because people were much freer back then. You know, you could smoke in movie theaters. You know, you,
no, no, but also when you just look at the music and the movie and the stuff that came out from there.
it was out there in the culture. People were just having a good time, and there didn't seem to be a lot of rules for anything.
All right, guys. Okay, so last few minutes, man, we'll take a few questions from the live chat before we get out of here. So, like last 5-10 minutes, let's just take a few questions from the live chat, and then we'll get out of here. Special mention, Ghostbusters 2.
Ghostbusters 2 is better than the first one, I would argue.
Yes,
I would argue that the second one is better than the first one. Absolutely.
people
I should have thought
people
of that.
will say I'm crazy. I always preferred part two to part one.
Totally with you, man. Totally with you.
You know,
Painting alone, man. That dude in the painting, it was so freaky. Uh, what was his name? Vlad. It was like Vlad Tepes, or so, it was something like a riff off the of the real life Dracula. But yeah, he freaked me out. Something fierce. And then the movie itself is more entertaining. I feel.
yeah, no, 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 no. I mean, no, Ghostbusters 1 is a good, very good script. But just thought Ghostbusters 2, yeah, it was more exciting. More things happened. So, okay, so where is Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter now? Let me answer first.
Okay.
I've only watched. I'm actually a big fan of the Harry Potter books. I've read, I think, 3 or 4 of the Harry Potter books. I watched the first film with my sister. Didn't like them because the characters didn't represent the ones that I had um, in
Envision.
in my vision. Lord of the Rings. The reason why I don't have it there is that 2000 Return of the King aren't sequels. The story was already mapped out. Remember, the films were filmed at the same time. All 3 films were filmed at the same time, and they just made re-edits and did reshoots in
Yeah, of course.
subsequent ways. But all 3 films were filmed at the same time.
I definitely don't include Lord of the Rings because of that. Because if I were to, then Two Towers would be definitely in my top 10 because it's the best of the Lord of the Rings movies. I would argue. Um, and I also didn't include Star Wars. I don't know why. It's just because I don't think that any of the sequels. You and I both agree that New Hope is the best of the Star Wars movies,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So, in order for you to be considered as one of the best sequels of all time, then you would think that the sequel would be better than the original. All these I consider better than the originals. You know, all the ones I listed,
mm.
including Toy Story 3. I don't think there's a single movie that I listed that isn't better than the original in my estimation. So that was my rationale. Is like I'm going to list movies that are better than the originals.
Okay, wait. So I think our friend here, Salah, missed a list. Can you run through your top 10 list?
Well, there's one. Sorry, there's one movie, Back to the Future. I think Back to the Future is the exception. Where I think Back to the Future, the original is actually better than the sequel. But the
Oh,
sequel is so strong that I had to include it anyway.
okay. So I think he just wants us to reveal our lists again.
I'm going to say it really quick, and then you can do it. Hey, Church, yeah.
Okay.
All right. So 10 is Batman Forever. 9 is Toy Story 3. 8 is Die Hard 3. 7 is Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. 6 is Naked Gun 33 and a third. 5 is Mission Impossible 3. 4 is X2. 5 is Back to the Future. No, sorry, 3 is Back to the Future. 2 is Before Sunset. And number 1 is Mad Max.
Okay. So mine are 10 Batman Returns, 9 Captain America Winter Soldier, 8 Aliens, 7 Empire Strikes Back, 6 Rush Hour 2, 5 John Wick 2, 4 Godfather 2, 3 The Matrix Reloaded, 2 T2, 1 Back to the Future 2. So
Decent list, man. Decent list. Can I just name a few that I saw like that were being commonly listed in like the greatest sequels of
mm,
all that I think are absolutely ludicrous for anybody to include in their lists, and that's Toy Story 2, The Crow 2, which I saw listed.
oh,
I saw the Crow. The Crow one was a great movie. The second one was a disgrace for me. Before Midnight, which is the third of that franchise I mentioned, which is undoubtedly the dud in the franchise. Iron Man 3, which is one of the worst MCU films I've ever seen, and garbage, absolutely garbage. Lethal Weapon 2, which I think is bookended by better movies, whether it be Lethal Weapon 1 or 3 and 4, I think are ultimately better movies than 2. Although it's not that bad of a movie. And then Blade 2. Blade 2 is nowhere near as good as the first one. And there's this whole contingent of people that argue that it's better than the original.
stupid. It says nowhere near.
Word, man.
So I think a lot of people will obviously be wondering why we don't have the Dark Knight in the top 10.
Are they? If they know us, they'll know.
Look, I've already said my view on that film. Really good film.
That's
Bill and
good.
Ted's Bogus Journey. Really good.
Shout. I agree.
Um,
Shout. There's Home Alone 2 is also a good shout.
Home Alone 2 is good. Home Alone 2 is a good film. Favorite post-apocalyptic movie, minus 12 Monkeys. I've got to go with either Escape from New York or Mad Max Road Warrior 2.
Yeah, 12 Monkeys is a very good flick, man.
Brad Pitt's best performance.
Very slick, directed by Terry Gilliam.
Mm.
An incredible visual director. And great soundtrack with like an Argentinian tango sort of very melodic, very memorable orchestra, composition. And yeah, I loved 12 Monkeys, but I think I'm going to go with Fury Road off the top of my head. Although I really dug this Van Damme flick back in the day called Cyborg, which is also
Bro, Do you know how? Remember the villain in Cyborg?
Yeah, that guy was legit, man. That dude
That
was.
film was dark.
That's one of my favorite Van Damme flicks, and yeah, worth a watch, man. Worth a watch. Dude, Bloodsport and Kickboxer remain some of my favorite movies of all time.
Let me tell you this right now. Let me tell you something about the best training in any film I've seen is the training in Kickboxer.
Amazing with the coconut.
Yeah, the
With
training in Kickboxer is the best training sequence I've seen in any film.
where he's kicking the tree and to like do it in
Yeah,
Tong.
and then those trees make him do the splits
Yeah,
and
fantastic.
stuff.
And Tong Po is one of the greatest villains of all time, man. Tong
Um,
Po is the guy with the villain in Kickboxer.
oh yeah.
Evil looking.
um, underrated film, man. Waterworld was underrated.
I don't think it was anywhere as bad as people said it was.
Oh no, it wasn't.
There's movies that get unfairly maligned, and that's one of them. I thought it was just a flick with Kevin Costner, who I'm not too fond of,
Yeah.
but um, for what it was fine. It was entertaining. I enjoyed myself when I went to watch it.
Yeah,
Back
no. I mean, like it was
I
a
watched that in the theaters, man.
yeah, no. I mean, look, it was a pretty cool concept, and I think it was sort of well executed and well done, man. So and yeah, I don't think I think when you watch it again and in hindsight, it's like, is it really as bad as people say it was?
That's,
So
the reason why I think it's because of the name. It's like the sinking ship, like Water World,
mm,
because of how expensive it was and how, because apparently, like the budget back then was absolutely astronomical, and it was a dud at the box office bomb, and so it got unfairly maligned.
you know, this is interesting. Maybe we can sort of end with this. A few dollars more. This is one of my favorite films of all time. Do you know why I didn't have it? I don't count it as a sequel.
Is that the Sergio Leone movies?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't count it as a sequel because Fistful of Dollars is a direct copy of Yojimbo. So the first film is done on void because it literally copies. So I view the first film in that um, category as few dollars more. So, and also, Few Dollars More isn't really a sequel to Fistful. Few Dollars More, I think it's even like a different character. I think Clint Eastwood actually plays a whole different character, and even the villain as well. Everything is different. So it's just a second edition, but it isn't actually a direct story sequel to Fistful of Dollars. But Few Dollars More is one of my favorite films of all time for sure. Look, guys, let's jump off, man. I need to
To get some shut eye, but can I tell you something? You know what we should do?
mm,
Most disappointing sequels, or most, or what do you think of that? Why don't you guys shoot us some ideas? But disappointing sequels is a pretty good one, no? No,
the list is long, man.
this is long,
and
huh?
and it'll bring back some because I can see I can see my list.
Yeah. Yeah.
So disappointing sequels or disappointing films.
Well, but it's almost this.
We can not. I don't know whether I can do a 10 of disappointing sequels, but disappointing films. Oh my gosh.
With disappointing films, it's usually you're disappointed because there was a previous something. There was something prior that made you have high expectations for that film. And that usually is a like a something like,
Mm,
well,
yeah,
or an amazing director that had a very nice body of work, and then all of a sudden he does this movie, directs this movie that's complete shit. You know, I can
yeah.
forgive
I
that.
mean, yeah. I'd need to dig in deep on that, but that could be a cool one. Um, I think either that or this.
Yeah, let's do it. I'd love to do that as well.
Something. I think you know what. I think we should. shift gear and go into top 10 comic book films. And also because what that's good is that people have been asking to see a comic book. So I think
Oh, it's not. I closed the comic book, but the campaign, but I'm gonna relaunch the part 2 of the book, and it's gonna include the first one. So like once we do that, then I'll be
so you
happy.
no, because guys are sort of interested in just knowing about your comic book. So like we can link before we do the top 10, just give like an introduction as to the story, what it's about, show some artwork and everything, and then you can
I,
maybe get if you guys in here to sort of get interested in it. So
thanks, man.
all
Appreciate
right,
it.
guys, that's all from us, guys. Peace out, stay true, and we're out. Peace.